are on day number 348 in 2022. And so God has given us the strength. After 348 days, we are still alive. So that is enough to give thanks and praise to God for all his benefits towards us. And so as I pray, I wish to remind our political leaders the motto of our nation is to put our country above self and to put God above the country. I want to pray today that the Lord will help us in this national budget as we are here to transact business for the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for this day that you have made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you for the many benefits that you have bestowed upon us. You have kept us safe throughout all 2022, and thus far, you're still keeping us. Thank you for this day where our leaders gather to transact business for important matters affecting our federation. Help them today to exemplify good morals, exemplify good conduct and behavior, and help them to remember that they are a part of the church. So I pray, dear God, for your will to be done. In Proverbs 15 and 22, it tells us that plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. So thank you, gracious God, for our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence Jew, his cabinet. I ask that you will give them wisdom, insight, and foresight. I pray for the advisors. I pray for the opposition leader and their members. I pray for the Speaker of the House and all who are involved in this capacity. I thank you, Father, for all them. And I pray for divine wisdom, discernment, and revelation in matters that concern us as a people and our future. I pray for honesty. I pray for transparency. I pray for open communication among all. Guide the thoughts and let your will be done. I pray for everyone involved in organizing, planning, and executing the business of Parliament. Give them patience and good understanding and guidance. Keep everyone safe. I pray, dear God, against the partners, dear God, that doesn't have the nation best interests at heart. I come against crooked partners, dear God, who would not, dear God, have the nation best interest at heart. I pray that you will surround our government, dear God, with good counselors. I pray that you will surround them, dear God, with good partners, dear God, for they cannot do it by themselves. And so we need some good investors and some good partners, dear God, that will help for nation building. Father, I pray that your will be done today. Oh God, I pray for humility from our residents and citizens and leaders. We pray for healing in our land. Oh God, we know that your Lord, you are in control. And once you are in control, nothing can be out of control. And once we put everything into your hands, oh God, your hands will be in everything. I pray, dear God, that you will cover us as a people. Father God, grant wisdom, understanding to our government leaders, policy makers, and legislators to make wise decisions that support, dear God, our nation building, sustainability, and partnerships and jobs creation for unemployed and among us, dear God, especially our young people, dear God. I pray everyone in the Federation would find hope in the words of our national anthem, a country where peace abound, our children stand free. I pray, dear God, that peace will abound, dear God, in our nation. I pray, dear God, that whatever would be discussed here and dialogue, that your Holy Spirit will take charge. I come against every principalities that come up and rise up against the nation. And I apply the blood of Jesus Christ against the workers of darkness, dear God, that prowls to try to destroy our good land. Father, dear God, we pray for St. Kitts and Nevis. Cover us, dear God, in time like these. We need you now more than ever. And without you, life has no purpose. And without purpose, life has no meaning. And without meaning, life is insignificant. So I pray that as our leaders discuss, dear God, oh God, this national budget today, may your will be done in the mighty and holy precious name of Jesus. And I say amen and amen. I want you to turn to the person next to you and tell them you are not fully just until you smile. You look so much better when you smile. God bless you nicely.
Thank you, Bishop Webb. Please be seated. If we haven't all done so as yet, might we place all our devices on silent? I would wish for the duration of the proceedings today to be uninterrupted by phones and the like. Thank you.
Confirmation of minutes.
Minutes are deferred.
Messages from the Governor General.
One message. I am pleased to advise that the fiat from the Governor General has been received. A fiat is required anytime there is a bill which considers the expenditure of monies from the Consolidated Fund. It requires permission from the Governor General for the bill to be introduced and debated. For the record, the fiat was written to the Honorable Minister of Finance, and it says, in pursuance of Section 43 of the St. Christopher and Nevis Constitution Order, 1983, and acting in accordance with the advice of the Cabinet, I recommend for the introduction into the National Assembly the following: Appropriation Bill 2023 Bill 2022. The fiat is dated the 8th day of December 2022 and is signed by His Excellency the Governor General, Sir Tapley Seaton. That is the extent of the message from the Governor General. Next item, please.
Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, specially invited guests, listening and viewing audience, good morning. I wish to officially welcome you to the budget debate. Said debate's focus will touch and concern the expenditure and revenue plan for the year 2023. The importance of the proceedings today and the upcoming days are informed by and take authority from Section 71 of the Constitution of St. Christopher and Nevis, which prescribes that the minister responsible for finance shall cause to be prepared and laid before the National Assembly before or not later than 60 days after the commencement of each financial year, estimates of the revenues and expenditure of the government for that financial year. In light of these instructions, Madam Clerk, might we move to the next item on the order paper?
Presentation of papers and of reports from committees.
Madam Speaker, I rise and seek your leave to lay before this honorable House from the National Audit Office a report on the audit of the public accounts of the government of St. Kitts and Nevis 2021. All right, Madam Speaker, I would also like to lay before this honorable House the draft estimates for the year 2023. Madam Speaker, as the Minister of Finance, it is indeed an honor and a privilege for me, for the first time, to present in this honorable House our government's proposal for the fiscal year 2023. The programs and activities proposed are forward-looking and are designed to help our country and people to move past COVID-19, especially after recognizing that the pandemic is now endemic. The draft estimates that are being presented by my government, our government, represent our intention to deepen the recovery process. We will continue to stimulate growth and build resilience, which would translate into a better way of life for our people. This presentation is buttressed by our vision that aims to transform St. Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable island state. To this end, initiatives have and will continue to be assessed to ensure proper alignment with our sustainable island state agenda. Volume 1 provides the details of our government's expenditure and revenue plans, while the proposals for expenditure line ministries are presented in Volume 2. Our government has worked hard to ensure that the necessary resources would be provided to facilitate a more effective and efficient delivery of public services. In this regard, we are proposing the allocation of $1.02 billion to support recurrent and capital expenditure as well as principal payments in 2023. We therefore recommend the following allocations, which represent our proposal for both recurrent expenditure, capital expenditure, and net lending and principal payments. Ministry amounts, I will go through now, Madam Speaker. Governor General, $1,933,990. Parliament, $2.1 million. Audit Office, $1.5 million. Justice and Legal Affairs, $14.1 million. Prime Minister's Office, $100 million. National Security, Citizenship, and Immigration, $98 million. International Trade, Industry, Commerce, and Consumer Affairs, $6.3 million. Finance, $307 million. Social Development and Gender Affairs, $43.2 million. Agriculture, Fisheries, Marine Resources, and Cooperatives, $25.1 million. Tourism, Civil Aviation, and International Transport, $44.5 million. Public Infrastructure, Energy, Utilities, and Domestic Transport, $63.6 million. Education, $111,857,074. Health and Social Security, $93,889,465. Sports and the Creative Economy, $19.1 million. Sustainable Development, $15.5 million. Foreign Affairs, $20.2 million. Office of the Attorney General, $13.1 million. Employment and Labor, $6.3 million. Housing, Human Settlement, Ecclesiastic Affairs, and Faith-Based Affairs, $6.7 million. Environment, Climate Action, and Constituency Empowerment, $8.5 million. Information, Communication, Technology, and Posts, $13.4 million. Youth Empowerment, Aging and Disability, $2.4 million. Economic Development and Investment, $2.6 million. Small Business and Entrepreneurship, $1.2 million. Total expenditure, therefore, $1,024,637,301. Madam Speaker, the proposed allocations would allow the line ministries to undertake their critical roles as we chart a new trajectory for growth and development. This would be the beginning of truly placing our people and their future first in our efforts at building a resilient society. Our capital expenditure proposals will advance the implementation of sustainable and resilient projects that will generate employment in both emerging and traditional sectors in our economy. Having outlined an ambitious medium-term agenda, we have infused realism in the outlook for fiscal year 2023 as we endeavor to build forward, not only from an infrastructural perspective, but to inspire our people to emerge from the recent challenges in a better way, more self-reliant way.
Motion for the approval of the estimates of expenditure.
Madam Speaker, I rise again to beg leave to move to introduce. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled, to move for the first time the bill reading or shortly entitled the Appropriation Act 2023-2022.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
Indulgence, please.
Madam Speaker, I rise again to move for the approval of the estimates of expenditure.
Respectfully, Honorable Member, I would wish for you to withdraw the motion that is already on the floor before we move to the second motion.
Right.
Yes, please, for the record.
Right, for the record. I move to
Yes.
withdraw. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Reintroduce?
Yes, so I reintroduce, Madam Speaker, a motion for the approval of the estimates of expenditure.
Seconder?
I second that motion, Madam Speaker.
The question is that the estimates of expenditure be approved. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Next item, please.
Statements by ministers. Personal explanations. Introduction of bills and first reading.
Madam Speaker, I rise to lead the debate of and have read for the second time, for the first time in this honorable House, a bill shortly entitled the Appropriation Bill 2023-2022.
Seconder?
I rise again, Madam Speaker, to second the motion.
The question is that the Appropriation 2023 Bill 2022 be read a first time. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to provide for the services of St. Christopher and Nevis for the financial year commencing 1st January 2023 and ending on 31st December 2023, otherwise known as the Appropriation 2023 Bill 2022.
The bill, shortly entitled the Appropriation 2023 Bill 2022, has been read a first time. Next item, please.
Public business bills, second reading.
Madam Speaker, I rise to lead the debate of and have read for the second time in this honorable House the bill shortly entitled the Appropriation 23 Bill 2022. 2022, correct. Madam Speaker, I greet you, the members of this honorable House, and the citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis with a joyful heart and an optimistic sense of purpose. We are indeed humbled by the tremendous support of our people who said yes to the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party and chose our dynamic team to take the helm of government after successfully contesting the elections of 5th August 2022. I am equally humbled by the overwhelming support for my candidacy as the leader of this great party, the oldest party in the English-speaking Caribbean, 90 years old this year, which has propelled me to the elevated positions of Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Today, as our people witness the delivery of the first budget of their new administration, we give thanks to Almighty God for bringing us to this point in our journey in nation building. Hearty thanks to the people of this great federation for placing their trust in our capacity to lead the government and deliver on the mandates they have given us. We wholeheartedly pledge to work hard on behalf of every citizen and resident of this country so that we can all achieve a better standard of living here in our federation. At this first time, many citizens and residents are aware of the 7 pillars that the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Administration has given as a commitment to pursue in the creation of a better St. Kitts and Nevis. With these 7 pillars as our guide, we have chosen to frame our first budget under the theme, towards our transformation as a sustainable island state. I repeat, Madam Speaker, towards our transformation as a sustainable island state. This theme challenges the government, businesses, civil society, and households to rethink our collective approaches to governance, public policy, commerce, socio-economic development, and our continued existence here on these 2 islands we call home. In many respects, Madam Speaker, this is a clarion call to action as we are challenged to find better options for sustaining growth and development of our country. We therefore must pursue a path where we can build forward, but not only build forward, but build forward better. To guide us along this path, our government has adopted a clear agenda to transform St. Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable island state. Our sustainable island state agenda is founded on 7 key pillars, which include food security, green energy transition, economic diversification, sustainable industries, the creative economy, COVID-19 recovery, and social protection. In this context, over the next 12 months, our government will use the 2023 estimates as a vehicle to vigorously pursue a number of policies, programs, and projects that would allow us to achieve some of the important objectives that will help us to move forward with our agenda to make St. Kitts and Nevis a better place to live, to work, and to visit. Madam Speaker, our new administration has only been in office for 4 short months, but the People's Aid team has hit the ground running and has already recorded a number of important people-centered achievements, and in other respects has set history already in these short 4 months. During the election campaign, we recognized many of the shortcomings of the government system and pledged to bring better management of and results from the operations of the public sector. We have come to office to pursue a better way for the development of our country to the benefit of all citizens and residents. That is why, immediately on taking office, our Labor administration set the wheels in motion to ease the heavy burden of some of the most vulnerable citizens and residents. Our new administration moved swiftly to make good on its promise to those workers who lost their jobs because they chose not to take the COVID-19 vaccine at that time. Our government secured the resources necessary to support the gratuitous payment, which has been paid to the workers who registered their termination notice with the Labor Department. To date, the government has disbursed $1.3 million in payment to 64 persons who were affected by the discriminatory policies of their former employers. Similarly, our Labor administration has kept its promise to thousands of public sector workers who risk their lives in service to our country, but were forced to suffer serious dejection of being overlooked when it was time for the previous administration to show tangible appreciation for their service, something that I spoke about and I was scoffed at, Madam Speaker. But to date, with the new Labor administration, the caring Labor administration, to date, a total of $5.4 million has been paid to 2,679 public servants. This investment in our people is symbolic of the care and compassion of our St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration. It also represents our appreciation of our workers, hence our attempt to bring relief by repairing the breach in trust and restoring the morale of many public servants who we are relying on a daily basis to deliver some of the most critical services of our government. Our people can always count on this Labor administration to do the right thing and always work to protect the interests of our people in St. Kitts and Nevis. Madam Speaker, this Labor administration will work assiduously over the coming years to ensure that our country thrives, regains its prominence as a leading small island developing state, and moves closer to achieving its full potential. As we examine the current systems, we have come to the realization that much effort is required to rebuild our institutions into strong, well-functioning, self-sustaining, and resilient public entities. Moreover, our government has started the process to reimagine and redesign the approach to economic and social development by upending some of the existing systems to make them more equitable, inclusive, and responsive. We will therefore build on the success of the past Labor administrations to bring to life our new vision for good governance, and I stress the word good governance, economic and climate resilience, job creation, social justice and protection, food security, and fostering entrepreneurship. Madam Speaker, permit me now to look at the most recent national macroeconomic developments, which would, of course, afford us a better way. Madam Speaker, we are all aware that the economic prospects for our small island open economy are heavily dependent on what is happening at the global level, particularly the economic situation of our major trading partners. It is important, therefore, to note that the global economy is expected to increase by 3.2% in 2022 and 2.7% in 2023. There is a looming threat of a global recession in 2023, accompanied by downside risks, which include inflation, tightening global financial conditions, continued supply chain disruptions, the ongoing war in Ukraine and other geopolitical tensions, and the potential negative impacts of climate change. Against this backdrop, economies in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union are expected to record growth in real GDP of 6.4% in 2022 and 5.9% in 2023. Madam Speaker, on the domestic front, a review of the government's 2021 fiscal performance highlighted how heavily the former administration relied on the proceeds from the Citizenship by Investment program to fund the operations of the government. This is not a sustainable practice, Madam Speaker. During that year, inflows from the CBI program accounted for 54.9% of total revenue and grants and funded 63.5% of the government's total expenditure. Madam Speaker, it is clear that this cannot be the pathway that we pursue as a country. And that is why I think that the people voted for the Labour Party's administration to take the helm of government to work on changing this reality. This situation puts us at extreme risks, and as a country, we must divert from it. Total revenue and grants for the 2021 fiscal year, therefore, amounted to $988.8 million, of which recurrent revenues was $970.4 million and grants were $18.4 million. While non-tax revenue exceeded the budget by 106.9%, mainly on account of the proceeds from the CBI program, tax revenue was 19.8% lower than anticipated. What will cause this? The low level of tax revenue highlights the prolonged negative effects that the pandemic and country lockdowns have had on individuals and on businesses. With respect to expenditure, the total amount that was expended for the 2021 fiscal year was $855 million. Of this amount, $701.8 million was related to recurrent budget expenditure, and $153.2 million was for capital expenditure and net lending. Outlays for recurrent expenditure were 10% more than the budget, while capital expenditure and net lending was 20.7% below the estimates. The overall expenditure for recurrent expenditure was primarily related to financial support that was granted to a few government entities and agencies, as well as additional transfers to the Nevis Island administration to assist with the extra month's salary payments in December of that year. The cost associated with the implementation of the income support, disability support, and fuel subsidy programs, as well as expenditure beyond that which was budgeted for the poverty alleviation program and conducting due diligence on CBI applicants also contributed to the excess expenditure. With respect to the debt, Madam Speaker, at the end of December 2021, the total public sector debt stood at $1.6 billion, or 69.2% of GDP. This represents a decline of 1.2% in absolute terms, but an increase of 1.1 percentage points in the debt to GDP ratio. The increase of the ratio was the result of the estimated contraction in the economic activity for 2021 when compared to 2020. 40% of the debt stock was contracted by the federal government, and the remaining 60% was owed by public corporations on St. Kitts and Nevis and the Nevis Island administration. Madam Speaker, COVID-19 and the policies enacted in response to the disease have resulted in dramatic changes in many aspects of our economy. Aside from the impact on the economic sectors, the pandemic had a dramatic effect on the labor force. In the height of the pandemic in 2020, overall job loss was recorded at 12% when compared to 2019. The sectors recording the most significant declines were tourism, construction, transport, storage, and communication, manufacturing, real estate, renting, and business activities and wholesale and retail sectors. The effect was global almost. As of July 2022, data from the Social Security Board showed that major sectors such as manufacturing, construction, tourism, real estate, renting, business activities, and transport, storage, and communication continue to record job losses above 10% when compared to the pre-pandemic levels. The manufacturing sector has been the slowest to recover, with no job gains since the pandemic. This was mainly due to the loss of 4 major manufacturing plants and the downsizing of other operating in the sector. Statistics like these make it much more difficult for any rational person to fathom the former administration's strategy for insisting on the continued imposition of draconian COVID-19 protocols well beyond the point where they were supported by science. Madam Speaker, I would say that the first decision that I made was on the 7th of August 2022 when I met with the task force and asked the task force for the scientific data as to why we still had the restrictions that were hurting our people, our businesses, and our economy. Madam Speaker, I was told in that meeting that the science actually suggests the opposite, that our resistance was such that we could lift all the restrictions, including no testing and including no mask wearing. But as a responsible administration, we decided to keep the mask wearing in health institutions. That affected our economy significantly when we could have lifted those about 3 months earlier. Tourism took a significant hit because persons who would have made their arrangements months in advance were waiting to see what St. Kitts and Nevis would do. But this government, on the basis of science and understanding how important it is to have an economy that is open, we took the scientific decision to lift all restrictions and said to the world that St. Kitts and Nevis is indeed open for business. So these COVID-19 protocols affected the economy. The former administration chose not to open up the country. The result was to stunt job creation and productivity in the economy, resulting in the slow pace of employment we experienced for the better part of this year. So what we met upon assuming responsibility for the government was a whole lot of damage to the economy and a whole lot of hurting people, Madam Speaker. We determined that enough was enough. As our Labour administration will not ever let our people suffer, especially when it is crystal clear that there is a better way to approach this important public policy. Our government believes that at all times, we must ensure that our decisions are guided by data and science, particularly as it relates to matters of health, jobs, and the economy. This is why, as I mentioned before, one of the first actions taken by our government was the removal of all COVID-19 related travel protocols, thereby fully reopening the country for business. The reopening of the economy, Madam Speaker, has major positive implications well beyond the economic sphere. For certain, it has had positive impacts on the physical and mental health of our people. Madam Speaker, I'm a practicing doctor. I was practicing at that time. People will recall that I was the first with Dr. Patrick Martin, Dr. Sharon Archibald, to set up a panel to discuss COVID-19. And Dr. Sharon Archibald was invited to that panel to discuss mental health issues because we foresaw that mental health would have been a significant part of what COVID-19 would leave with us. Simply put, Madam Speaker, as I said, it was the right thing to do, and this is what the data and science supported. In October of this year, we repealed the COVID-19 Act, or COVID-19 Prevention and Control Act, by way of a public amendment, by way of an amendment to the Public Health Act. And those who are following would remember when I brought this to the Parliament, thereby discontinuing all COVID-19 legislative protocols, including the requirement to wear face coverings. This gives citizens, residents, and visitors the freedom to employ any non-pharmaceutical measures they deem necessary to protect themselves from all communicable diseases, including COVID-19. We encourage the general public to continue to protect their health and take precautions where necessary. Let me say, Madam Speaker, again, I need to stress it, that this decision was based on scientific data to lift the ban and to make sure that there were no more restrictions. However, I want to place on record at this point that I'm a practicing doctor, and I believe in the science of vaccination, and no one should question where I stand when it comes to that. However, the position was, why not explore and exploit all possibilities of educating our people instead of being draconian? And therefore, I think on hindsight, we would recognize that we could have achieved what we wanted to achieve had we done that. And with respect to the COVID-19, we recognize that an amendment could have been made to the Public Health Act and could have given all the powers to ensure that we could have taken all the necessary measures we needed to take. So I want people and our people to understand, Madam Speaker, that even though we have repealed COVID-19 and we have amended the Public Health Act, within that act, just in case there's a surge of the virus again, there lies the power to really make sure that we can do what we have to do to protect ourselves. So I wanted to make that clear as well, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when we look at the current state of our economy here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we immediately see the lost opportunities of the last 7 years and are strongly compelled to pursue an alternative pathway. Food security is a high priority in our sustainable island state agenda and has significant links to the expansion of our manufacturing sector and the creation of sustainable livelihoods. Our government is committed to modernizing the agriculture sector and bringing it into the 21st century. This is a crucial part of our thrust for the reimagining of our development to build a sustainable island state. And I dare state that is why the Honorable Samuel Duggins, member from number 4, is our Minister of Agriculture. He himself, who is a practitioner, who was awarded even during the last administration for his efforts to create hydroponics. And that is the type of innovation that he would bring to our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis as we set this agenda to become food secured. Food security is very important, Madam Speaker. You know, somebody sent me something and they said, Dr. Drew, I went to buy something last week and this week and look at the difference in the price. Food prices are really affecting our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we must address it. Therefore, we are determined to ensure that the repositioning of the agricultural sector to enable it to make a greater contribution to economic growth, employment, food and nutrition security, and overall sustainability of our country. During the last 4 months, much of the activities undertaken by this administration were geared towards deepening climate-smart agricultural practices and promoting sustainable agriculture. Over the next 5 years, we hope to achieve our goal to significantly increase production and manufacturing of agricultural products by introducing and/or scaling up the use of technology and innovative techniques. In examining the state of the fisheries sector, we have recognized that there are opportunities to take better advantage of the blue economy. And let me say, Madam Speaker, that here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have more resources in the sea than we have on land. The last time I checked, I was told that our resources, or our space in the sea, is 47 times what we have on land. And therefore, this is why this vastly untapped area can not only tremendously increase our potential for fish production and export, but also holds vast potential for innovation and development of marine industries here in the Federation. We have already begun the work in respect of increasing fish production and export. We are currently engaged in negotiations with a potential investor who is interested in establishing a major fisheries plant here on St. Kitts. It is our hope that the construction of this new plant will spark a renewed interest in the fishing industry and create the key linkages necessary to propel the sector forward. To further revive interest in the sector, the government will increase the accessibility of key fishing infrastructure in major fishing villages around the island. We will revive the plans envisioned by the former Labour administration for the establishment of a fishing complex in Deep Bay to serve the fisher folks of Deep Bay and the surrounding communities. In the coming year, Madam Speaker, we will bring relief to the fishermen of Deep Bay with the introduction of modern equipment to provide ice for the various fishing enterprises. We understand the needs of the fishing community in Deep Bay, and we will start by addressing this important need of our fisher folk. Madam Speaker, agro-processing has been one. But before I go on, Madam Speaker, the member from number 6 is very keen on making sure that the fisher folk in Deep Bay would have their needs meet so that they can ply their trade and, of course, help us when it comes to food security. Madam Speaker, agro-processing has been one of the bright spots in the agriculture sector, as many local agro-processors have been able to penetrate the retail market. Just recently, Madam Speaker, I had the opportunity to speak at an expo that dealt with financing for women in small business, put on by our dearest friends from the Republic of China, Taiwan. And I had the opportunity to visit a few of the stalls. And I kept asking, is this made and packaged in St. Kitts? It means, therefore, that with the help of our dearest friend, that we are really pushing forward when it comes to this. And that is why we have to create a budget. These estimates speak towards making sure we can advance and take full advantage of this market. However, Madam Speaker, their growth is being challenged by irregularities in product standards. To address this, our government, just a month after taking office, solidified an agreement with the European Union and the Caribbean Development Bank to enhance the national quality infrastructure required to improve agriculture product standards and marketability. They cannot do it alone. They need the government's help. This project provides St. Kitts and Nevis Bureau of Standards with new metrology equipment and training that is needed to improve services to agro-processors, enabling them to fulfill the strict quality requirements for international export. To support the development of the agriculture sector in 2023, Madam Speaker, it is proposed that 17 million be allocated to facilitate recurrent expenditure, a 20.4% increase when compared to the 2022 estimates. These resources would be used to further enhance human capacity with an increased emphasis on marketing, data collection, and analysis to foster informed decisions making and improve extension services. These would ensure that our farmers, our fishers, are equipped with knowledge to facilitate increased cultivation and yield. Capital expenditure is proposed totaling $8.2 million, a 25.3% increase when compared to the resources allocated in 2022. It is important to note that the investment that would be made in 2023 would represent the start of a medium-term vision for growth and development of the sector both on land and sea. In the coming year, major projects such as agricultural support, the Bayford's Livestock Center of Excellence, and the improvement and expansion of the Bastia Abattoir and Market will be used as vehicle to position the Federation closer to meeting the CARICOM target of 25% reduction in frozen meat imports by 2025. The upgrade of small farmers' machinery pool, the pest control program, and the improvement of fisheries management will also continue. The efforts under these initiatives, however, will benefit from improved direction. We will also invest in the expansion of greenhouses, a program that was almost stopped completely, and agricultural produce storage facilities to support expansion of the sector. May I have a drink of water, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, we are serious about food security. It is no accident that the Minister of Agriculture is the one who he is. He is one with tremendous experience, and so when he speaks later, as he builds out this, you would understand how we'll attack this in more detail. It sends a strong message that agriculture will not be put on the back burner, but has to be brought to the front burner if we are serious about food security. Madam Speaker, the global medicinal cannabis market has a value of over US $26 billion annually. Cannabis, commonly called marijuana among other names, finds application in the treatment of a wide range of diseases and symptoms, including cancers, chronic pain, depression, arthritis, diabetes, glaucoma, migraines, epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, HIV, ALS, and a plethora of diseases. The therapeutic benefits of cannabis have long been proven from ancient Africa and Asian cultures. While it may seem to some that the amendment to the Dangerous Drug Act in 2020, as well as the landmark judgment in the Sankofa Lion case, which allowed the religious use of marijuana, the operationalization of a medicinal cannabis industry is not quite that simple. Therefore, Madam Speaker, our St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration has chosen to take a more responsible and citizen-friendly approach of first researching and then selecting a unique set of policies to govern this new industry. Understanding the policy ecosystem is critical to how we will control and conduct operation in this new niche, including, but not limited to, the application of licenses, social equity models, and more. Beyond policy, Madam Speaker, it is also critical to engage with people and assess the gap between public expectations and the industry deliverables. To this end, Madam Speaker, a revamped medicinal cannabis authority has been installed with a mission to regulate the medicinal cannabis industry in St. Kitts and Nevis. Further, Madam Speaker, it is a vision of our government through this authority to have a medical, therapeutic, and scientific cannabis industry that creates equal opportunities. And I stress equal opportunities, Madam Speaker, because what we don't want is when this industry is launched that only those from outside can benefit from it. We want our people to fundamentally benefit from this industry. This enables, and Madam Speaker, as a practicing doctor, and one who knows about marijuana for many years, I already know about it, Madam Speaker. I've read about it in medical books. But this industry is now spreading, and as we have said, we'll be very responsible with the way we lay it out. I understand how important it will be, but we must make sure that it is not abused, and we must always keep in mind that we have to protect our children as well. It enables people's health and wellness with safe and diverse products, fosters investor confidence, and strengthens the St. Kitts and Nevis economy through an effective regulatory framework. Madam Speaker, on the issue of construction, job creation cannot take place without activities to ignite the engines of growth. The construction sector, an important engine for growth and development here in St. Kitts and Nevis over the years, has contributed on average 5% to job creation and about 16% to our GDP. Those are real numbers, madams. Even me have to pause again and look at that 16%. In 2022, however, all is not well in the sector, which is estimated to have declined by 1.5% and recorded over 20% in job losses in July 2022 when compared to the same period in 2021. Recognizing this, our government has put plans in place to foster employment gains and increase growth in the sector. Madam Speaker, the government and the private sector must work together on this issue of putting people back to work and advancing with plans for the expansion of much-needed infrastructure development. In the coming year, the government will initiate the construction of the Renaissance Housing Program. Under this program, our government will, over the next 5 years, seek to construct 2,000 energy-efficient homes around the island. Madam Speaker, we are aware that there are multiple generations living in homes, and this is creating a lot of social issues. And therefore, as a government, we must respond to it. And we recognize this more starkly during COVID-19, when everybody had to stay at home every single day. And that resulted, of course, in some social issues which must be addressed. The National Housing Corporation will commence the first phase of building in the first quarter of 2023 with the construction of about 100 homes. These homes will consist of a mix of 2-bedroom flats and townhouses. They will be equipped with the fixtures to accommodate the latest energy-efficient appliances, as well as solar panels to lessen the cost of electricity for homeowners. This is revolutionary, Madam Speaker. This is how we create a sustainable island state. I am a scientist by training, and I was told that St. Kitts and Nevis is one of the best places to harness solar energy, to the point where there's already an investor here who harnesses the energy, converts it into hydrogen, and propels his own small cottage hotel. And we are looking to expand on this. But we must take our responsibility as a people and use what God has given us and be innovative. He didn't give us oil, but he gave us sun. He gave us waves. He gave us wind. And he gave us geothermal. In an added effort to meet the high demands for the housing, NHC in the coming year will restart the West Street Housing Project and also explore the possibility of constructing 3 5-unit townhouse buildings, 2 in Pine Gardens and 1 in Taylors. The construction of these buildings will provide much-needed housing for families. Added to this, the NHC has received about 2,500 applications from landowners who are desirous of building their homes, which we will facilitate through the Building Assistance Program in partnership with the St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla National Bank. People must get opportunities to own homes, Madam Speaker. It is an accepted fact that previous Labour administrations have earned recognition as the original architects of housing development in the Federation, having built over 4,000 homes for our citizens. In this same vein, this new Labour administration will continue to innovate housing solutions to meet the demands of key demographics in our federation. Shortly, our government will develop housing communities for middle-income earners who do not have the financial dexterity to afford to buy or build a home in current real estate market. To support this initiative, we have already arranged for the land designated for these projects to be dispensed at a reduced market rate. This will lessen the overall construction costs and mortgage payments, thus increasing accessibility for our middle-income earners, of course, to have their own home. The main target groups earmarked to receive this benefit are young business owners and recent university graduates. Madam Speaker, we all know that you go to school for many years. For example, I went, I think, for 11 years. And sometimes when graduates come home, they have to live with their parents still, as we call it, shackle. And many of them have to stay at home until in their 40s. And this cannot be the way for persons who are seeking to advance themselves in this country through their own pursuit of higher education to live. And that is why we have to target these groups so that they too can enjoy the exploits of our country, and they can do it at an earlier age as well. Madam Speaker, this would have tremendous positive social impact. People can move out, go their own families, pursue their own dreams. And therefore, economics, to some people, is really a social science for many reasons how it impacts the society. And so to our graduates, we have not forgotten. And I'm sure when we speak further, we'll talk about the student loan issue that our university graduates go through, the high rates and the difficulties in paying back. But this government is also hearing that. So this government understands that it takes major developments to drive economic growth in any sector. Therefore, we will in short order push forward major public sector projects, such as the rebuilding of the Bastia High School at the original site. Madam Speaker, that has to be a wow. And I want to pause at this time and recognize the member from number 1, the Minister of Education, who recently with his PS has started to dismantle the Bastia High School. It is very sad for me to see that, Madam Speaker. I went to the Bastia High School. I went to sixth form at that site. And immediately after sixth form, I returned to be a teacher of physics and maths for 2 years before going to university. And so that is my alma mater. I have an emotional attachment to the school, as many persons in St. Kitts and Nevis. And to have seen that on the table or the altar of politically expedient maneuvers, that the Bastia High School was abandoned. 10 years. Those students, no real memories of a school. Had to go here, had to go there. But the reason why I stress it, if there was a scientific basis for it, I would support it 100%. But when I read the scientific reports from the scientific bodies that investigated the Bastia High School, and their reports were made public, and still people did not adhere to the scientific data at the expense of children, a decade of suffering that is difficult to forgive. But as my good member from number 1, who is also a spiritual guide, would say, forgiveness is always better. And so we forgive, but we must never forget. And this should be placed deep in our history as a travesty to our people and our nation, where for political reasons, the flagship high school of St. Kitts and Nevis was abandoned, left for forests to grow, trophies lost, documents lost, memories lost, all on the altar of politics. But even though that was done, Madam Speaker, I speak of hope, because the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party's administration will construct a brand new Bastia High School on the original site. We are a government, Madam Speaker, that believes in fixing what needs to be fixed. We will work towards completing critical projects that are currently captured under the capital estimates and complete several important projects that appear to be beyond the capacity of the former administration to implement. And I point to the Bastia High School. Madam Speaker, I must pause here again. $14 million spent already for the Bastia High School, and not one block laid. $14 million, and not one block laid. How do we explain to our people $14 million spent on a school? 14.4 million, we must remember that $400,000 spent. And as the member from number 1 normally says, to manage dirt. I ain't a builder, but I can manage dirt. So if I manage dirt at $14.4 million, that is a good job to have. But Madam Speaker, it hurts, it speaks to the travesty, recklessness, mismanagement that took place during those years. How do we explain that, Madam Speaker? And can you imagine a bill was sent?
Every month.
Every month a bill sent. Still, $163,000 sent every month for project management of the Bastia High School. Can you imagine that, Madam Speaker? There are many other examples of things like that. But there's hope, Madam Speaker, because we will build a brand new Bastia High School and we will move forward. Madam Speaker, the record shows that it was a Labour administration that laid the groundwork for many of the infrastructural projects undertaken by the previous administration. We are well aware that roads are the arteries through which economic development, growth, and social function are dispensed. As such, this government, with the assistance of Public Works and Lands and Surveys Department, will, in the coming year, commence the design and construction of roads in residential developments that have yet to benefit from adequate road infrastructure, such as those developments under the special land distribution initiatives. We will, Madam Speaker, make sure that we build out our infrastructure. Madam Speaker, one of the risks that we face here in St. Kitts and Nevis is the lack of infrastructure. Each time that an investor comes, that is what they're asking for. Can you give me 4 megawatts of energy? Can you give me water? Do you have roads? Proper roads? The very basic things for their businesses to strive. We are struggling with, Madam Speaker. If one lives in Cayon or St. Peter's, we see the effects of lack of water. Frigate Bay, Bird Rock, Southeast. We know that recently our electricity was going, which I'll speak to later. But the point I'm making, our infrastructure is important on multiple fronts to make sure that our people can enjoy a good standard of living. But also, it is critical that we have the infrastructure to attract new investments. And that is why, Madam Speaker, it might have been over the last years that no new major industry came to St. Kitts, as I mentioned before, began to rely heavily on the CBI program. Madam Speaker, I now turn to tourism. The tourism sector recorded one of the sharpest declines in economic output nationally, regionally, and internationally as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, the sector recorded significant declines of 63.1% and 17.6% in 2020 and 2021, respectively. It is, however, reassuring to note the vastly improved prospects for the rebound of this vitally important sector since the Labour administration took office. Businesses operating in the tourism sector can attest to the positive impact of the full removal of the restrictive COVID-19 protocols in August of this year. Madam Speaker, I remember I was going to hotels and persons who are not nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis, mainly those of the Caucasian race, who are approaching me, hugging me, greeting me, saying thank you. I had to ask people what they're saying thank you for. They said thank you for lifting the restrictions. Eager to come to St. Kitts and Nevis. Further, the increased engagement by the leadership, and I want to highlight here, Madam Speaker, the member from number 2, Minister of Tourism and the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, has had a tremendous positive impact on the industry. In just 4 short months, St. Kitts has become the buzziest, a new term, buzziest destination. And we'll convert it from the buzziest to the busiest destination when the minister would have outlined, and I will give some information on how we'll do that. But I want to highlight the tremendous work that has been done there. The many trips that she has made, and people criticize. The more trips she made, the more ships come. So we see the increased engagement by the leadership of the Ministry of Tourism and the St. Kitts Tourism Authority with key local and international stakeholders has contributed immensely to a strong rebound. Madam Speaker, it is important for us to understand that the tourism sector is a catalyst for growth in several other sectors in the economy. Thus, the rebound in the industry has potential to multiply throughout sectors such as wholesale and retail, and transport and storage and communication. In keeping with the growth in the tourism sector, consumer demand rose as hotels and restaurants resumed full operations, resulting in the growth in the wholesale and retail sector. In the transport, storage, and communication sector, the increase can be attributed to the gradual return of air travel to the Federation. Air travel rebounded by some 288.6%, which is an indication that the tourism sector is well on its way to recovery. Cruise has also played a pivotal role within the overall sector, increasing by 18.4% in 2022, mainly driven by the increased cruise ship and visitor arrivals in the early part of the current cruise season. The Ministry of Tourism is predicting that our destination will experience an influx of over 900,000 cruise passengers for the 2022-2023 cruise season. Our government is standing firmly behind our tourism team and the many stakeholders who are working together to advance all aspects of the rebound of the sector. Madam Speaker, I had the opportunity to visit, what is the largest ship called? Wonder of the Seas. Largest ship, berthed right here in Bastille, at a pier that was envisioned by the previous Labour administration. And as I went on the ship, I asked a critical question. why is St. Kitts doing so well? And he said, your people are very friendly, and you have a lot of activities on this island that really puts it above many other destinations. Stakeholders. Madam Speaker, I know the Minister of Tourism will speak to it, and she will make a grand announcement, because we are not only the buzziest, but we have received another award that I will not announce. I would allow the Minister of Tourism to do that. But I just wanted to mention it because I'm extremely proud of the Minister and her team, who are working extremely hard to make sure that our tourism bounces back, but bounces back better. And I want to congratulate them on the venture deeper.
Indulgence, Honorable Member.
Yes.
For the last time, kindly put your devices on silent. I will give everybody 30 seconds to check your device to ensure that it is on silent before the Honorable Member proceeds. I gave an indication that I want no interruptions by these devices before we started. I find it to be disrespectful to the Honorable Members. So kindly check your devices for the last time. Should there be another interruption of that kind, I will have the person removed swiftly. Thank you very much. Kindly resume.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And therefore, the Venture Deeper campaign has resulted in tremendous positive benefits, and I want to, of course, congratulate them. Madam Speaker, it was clear that if we were to recover lost ground in the marketplace, there was a need to refresh our product and service offerings. Hence, St. Kitts Nevis Tourism Authority embarked on a campaign that would not only create demand, but one that truly highlights the unique qualities of our destination. After months of hard work and creative collaboration, both locally and internationally, at the end of September this year, we debuted Venture Deeper as our new brand campaign. The campaign builds on our island's distinctive characteristics while introducing elements of introspective self-discovery that reflect the purpose-driven goals of our today's travelers. Venture Deeper is designed to evoke within the traveler a desire to peel back our layers and discover the true essence of the destination. We believe that in doing so, more of our stakeholders can have interactions with our visitors, leading to greater economic impact. Our focus must now shift from a tunnel vision of solely looking at arrival numbers to also looking at how we can increase our visitor spend. The more they spend, the better it is for the economy. Our objective must be to offer competitive products and services, and to do so in a manner that maintains the highest standards and puts the greatest amount of money in the pockets of our people. We have put our people back to work and are focusing attention on the areas that will expand opportunities for sustained employment in the years to come. Madam Speaker, we have many successes to celebrate. In September, we were awarded an incredible international accolade. St. Kitts won the title of Caribbean's leading dive destination 2022 at the 29th World Travel Awards, a major milestone and honor. But this is not the big one. She will announce the big one. Being crowned best of the best in Caribbean dive destination is not only a testament to our beautiful and diverse underwater landscapes, but also to our exceptional dive operators and partners that make each journey memorable for visitors. This recognition solidifies our place as a competitive choice for divers of all levels. Even more recent, Madam Speaker, St. Kitts added another prestigious accolade, which I said I would leave for the Minister of Tourism. Caribbean Travels Awards announcement of St. Kitts has been recognized for our heavily concentration on providing rich and authentic travel experiences and our diligent focus on sustainability, community, and natural environment. This opulent recognition is also a direct result of our recently launched brand campaign, Venture Deeper, which has resonated within its source markets and the Caribbean diaspora. Madam Speaker, St. Kitts and Nevis continues to trailblaze and bolster its presence among other leading Caribbean destinations as indicated by this recent award. Madam Speaker, as we look ahead, I want to emphasize the importance of investing in our people and our infrastructure. The most urgent need is an improvement in our airlift, specifically more routes and cheaper fares. We must continue to focus on improving our airlift if we are to be as competitive as other islands in the region. To achieve this, there are critical actions that we must take. Madam Speaker, it is like having this beautiful country to visit, but sometimes you have difficulty getting there. The people want to come, and we must ensure that we create the avenues for them to come. And that is why Airlift is fundamental and important. The discussion must begin, however, on the ground in St. Kitts and Nevis. We will focus efforts on upgrading the Robert L. Bratcher International Airport to ensure that the arrival experience is of the highest standard and features innovative functions throughout. Madam Speaker, we believe in innovation. I know people see me reading here and they wonder, how is this thing working? Last year when the budget was given from paper. This year it's given by a device with special features. The reason why I say that, Madam Speaker, is that we are committed to introducing ICT and innovation in every aspect of our in our government to make sure that we can compete with those in our region and, of course, be a competitor on the international scene. Therefore, Madam Speaker, regarding resources, I am pleased to report that the 2023 estimates proposes to support the Ministry of Tourism, Civil Aviation and International Transport with an amount of $27 million for the recurrent expenditure. These resources would be used to further enhance and diversify tourism, our tourism products, particularly as it relates to the development of increased facilitation of community destination tourism. In support of the product development and airlift efforts, a capital budget totaling $17.6 million is proposed, of which $8 million has been allocated to enable us to attract new airlift into the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. On the front of manufacturing, Madam Speaker, as I mentioned before, about 4 factories have closed the doors and others, of course, have reduced their output. Madam Speaker, this government has pledged its commitment to ensure that the manufacturing sector is developed as a central pillar of our economy, serving as a greater contributor to economic growth. In our government's view, diversification of our economy is not optional. In fact, it is an essential pillar in the sustainable island state agenda, where manufacturing is seen as a vehicle for transforming our economy, creating sustainable jobs, and a credible source for earning critical foreign exchange. The Federation has historically had a robust and resilient manufacturing sector that employed close to 1,000 persons and which led the way in terms of OECS sub-regions exports to the North American market. However, we have seen over the past years closures of some of the manufacturing operations at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Park. It is time, therefore, to rethink, rebuild, and re-strategize to address the challenges that the sector faces. As a first step towards reviving the sector, the government has recently endorsed the updated version of the National Manufacturing Strategy 2022-2027. This strategy has renewed focus on improving the business environment and increasing the competitiveness of manufacturing operations in the Federation. Our vision is to facilitate the establishment of at least one additional manufacturing business in the Federation. We are targeting at least one factory to build solar panels that could provide easy access to low-cost energy-saving options for residents. Further, the ongoing initiatives to strengthen the St. Kitts and Nevis Bureau of Standards will provide additional support to the manufacturing sector. The proposed 2023 estimates will ensure that upgrades to the Bureau of Standards continue to strengthen the quality assurance mechanisms needed for our farmers and our producers to export products regionally and internationally. Madam Speaker, our Citizenship by Investment Program. Madam Speaker, for nearly 40 years, St. Kitts and Nevis has been the pioneer for the global investor immigration industry. The revenues from our Citizenship by Investment Program have allowed our nation to thrive. It has given us the opportunity to advance our people without over-reliance on international financial aid. After 4 decades of erudition and development, now is the time to ensure that the program transcends to the modern age and the security infrastructure is enhanced and strengthened. In the same vein, we are seeking to ensure that our CBI program is mutually beneficial for all stakeholders. Madam Speaker, I say all stakeholders, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, investors, developers, local service providers, and international marketing agents, all who are involved, Madam Speaker. We have forecasted that the revenues from our CBI program will be significant over the next few months. If such financial projections are realized, it is our government's goal to create a sovereign wealth fund. Madam Speaker, we have to create this fund. Recently, for the first time in the Caribbean that I can remember, that a government has shared its assets with its people through the dividend payment that we made. Madam Speaker, this concept is not a new concept at all. It is practiced in countries such as in the Middle East, where the proceeds from their oil they share with their people. And the dividend really avoids the use of resources based on political affiliation. Because nobody will be asked their political affiliation when they receive their dividend. We want our people to start thinking how to build and grow wealth. We want our people to invest, to understand terms of like dividend and investment and shares and annual general meetings. Let us remember it were the poor people of St. Kitts and Nevis, the sugar workers, led by our esteemed Sir Edmund Lawrence, who formed the penny bank that has led to the largest indigenous bank in the OECS. And if we did it then with persons who did not have the opportunity to educate themselves, who only had pennies and built a bank that is worth well over $1 billion today, what more can we do as a people with more education and more resources? So the government's goal to create the sovereign wealth fund, which will be responsibly managed by high-level professionals. This fund will be used to safely invest in the international markets and industries over the long term. We will ensure by legislation that the fund can only be tapped into for rainy days and not be used willy-nilly, as we say here in St. Kitts and Nevis, but with prudent financial practices. Madam Speaker, we are serious when we say that we must now introduce our people into a new realm, the realm of building wealth. Madam Speaker, we also intend to use CBI revenues to fuel our plans to implement a diversified economy. We can no longer put all of our eggs in one basket. Madam Speaker, it is disheartening to see how reliant we are on this one industry, when this industry afforded us the opportunity to diversify our economy, and that we shall do. This St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration will use our CBI profits to empower our people through entrepreneurship, sustainable work opportunities, and home ownership. No longer will CBI be used merely as a prop to boast about surpluses by sometime Kung Fu accounting. I heard that term the other day. They were talking about creative. Madam Speaker, no disrespect to the Kung Fu practitioners, of course. Our prudent government will use CBI revenues to improve our healthcare, social services, energy, infrastructure, and water security. In 2023 and beyond, our CBI program's profits will work for all Kittitians and Nevisians, not for just one set of people, but for all of our people. Madam Speaker, the CBI payment, the payment of the CBI dividend this week, which I spoke about, is the first proof of this new day and better way with respect to our citizenship by investment program. The truly diversified economy of St. Kitts and Nevis will emerge from the seeds planted today by our CBI inflows. Let it be known, Madam Speaker, that our citizenship is precious. Therefore, the evolved CBI program will invite bold and creative top-notch investors to our shores who will develop innovative industries in St. Kitts and Nevis. The construction of real estate developments pursuant to our government's priority infrastructure list, and in all things being substantial benefit to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Madam Speaker, a better way for human development and social protection. At all times, our pursuit of a sustainable island state must be undergirded by an unwavering commitment to build social cohesion and protect the most vulnerable in our society. We are committed to chart a better course for addressing the inequality and inequity that threaten to divide our society. Madam Speaker, it is no secret that those who study economies know that the larger discrepancies you have, the greater divides you have, the worse it is for economic development. Indeed, our commitment to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and our homegrown Sustainable Island State Agenda is one to ensure that no one is left behind. This is our philosophy, and we are prepared to translate our talk into action. In the 2023 estimates, we are proposing for the first time the establishment of a new Ministry of Youth, Aging, and Disabilities. Madam Speaker, I remember when I was young, our elderly folk used to be held in high regard. We have seen the decline of that over the years. And that is why we have committed to creating a Ministry of Aging, that as our population ages, they must know that this government will respond to their needs. We know those who are differently abled, Madam Speaker, they too must be given all the opportunities in this country to explore, advance, and also dream and live out their dreams, Madam Speaker. The new ministry will be mandated to support, empower, and pay special attention to the issues related to some of the most vulnerable citizens and residents. We believe that the work of this ministry would lead to significant improvement in the lives of our youth, elderly, and differently abled citizens and residents. Madam Speaker, as we examine the state of affairs of the social assistance and social protection systems of the government, we recognize that there is need for significant change to better target the various social programs to yield more acceptable results. A significant change that we have already instituted is the placement of the Poverty Alleviation Program where it belongs, under the purview of the Ministry of Social Development and Gender Affairs. The program is being reviewed to ensure that it truly serves as a social safety net to empower the most vulnerable amongst us. Part of the reform of this program is the implementation of proper systems for means testing and graduation of beneficiaries. Once the program is functioning properly, most participants should not find themselves in a perpetual state of needing cash assistance from the government. This is neither desirable nor sustainable. We prefer an alternative situation where the government would work with its people to create decent jobs with decent pay so that most of our people can take pride in the ability to sustain themselves and their families. More emphasis will be placed on training and assistance with job placements so that beneficiaries can upgrade their skills and graduate from the program when they reach a more self-sustaining stage of their lives. Indeed, this approach is also vital to ensure the sustainability and longevity of the program. Similarly, the Alternative Lifestyle Pathway Program is also operating on an unsustainable basis in its current form. Several of the participants we know are not being helped along the path, and this is sad. They are not being helped towards self-fulfillment and job security. The government has therefore initiated a review of the program with a view to implement reforms in 2023. Efforts will be made to halt any obvious abuses of the system and ensure that an alternative path is indeed created for our young men and women who seek help under this program. Madam Speaker, we know, and some of it that will be revealed, is that when we went to the PAP program, we had phantom names receiving money. Phantom social security numbers receiving money. People making $5,000 and $6,000 a month receiving money. Wastage and abuse. Who are these phantom names? Who do they belong to? Where has the money gone? Madam Speaker, these phantom social security numbers, who are they? These persons with very high salaries. And you have people who working for minimum wage could not get an opportunity, Madam Speaker. In the same way of the Alternative Lifestyle Program, what we call the Peace Program, went from double its numbers almost just before the elections, Madam Speaker. Bypassing all checks and balances, making the program unsustainable the way they positioned it just before the elections. Was not creating any real opportunity for people to develop themselves on that program and to become real productive citizens. Madam Speaker, I want to, at this juncture also, highlight a fact, and we must give the young men their due, what is due to them, their credit, that they came together and decided that they wanted to end the vicious cycles of violence that were affecting our country. They decided that, I must place the fact, they were not driven by money. It's a fact. But the system was corrupted. When money was introduced in the way it was introduced, when that gave us a great opportunity to transform the lives of persons who recognize that the path of crime is no path at all. Corrupted, Madam Speaker. Costing us about $30 million per year. Again, with names that don't exist. Children registered. Madam Speaker, it is really a travesty what took place with the goodwill of these young men, again on the altar of politics. These young men should be given real opportunities to be reintegrated into society. And that is what we are committed to make sure that everyone gets a chance, a fair chance, but a chance, a second chance, as he said, to reintegrate themselves. Madam Speaker, our government has a special interest in doing a better job of protecting and empowering our women and youth. Our actions to date speak to the seriousness with which we are approaching the protection of women here in the Federation. In November of this year, we successfully passed the Domestic Violence Amendment Act 2022, which makes much needed changes to protect victims of domestic violence and provide them with swift access to justice. In addition to the changes in the legislation, we will be providing resources via the 2023 estimates for the training of police and other law enforcement officers who are assigned to work with cases related to domestic violence. Over the medium term, we intend to honor our commitment to establish a special victim center, which would serve as a safe space for transitioning victims of domestic and sexual abuse and troubled youth who are not criminal offenders. In the interim, we will provide resources in the 2023 estimates to support stronger partnerships with established non-governmental organizations that are providing similar services. Since coming to office, Madam Speaker, we have exemplified what it means to have a commitment to gender equity. The commitment is reflected in our parliament, which now has the highest ever number of female members in its history. That deserves a round of applause. The commitment can also be seen in our appointments to boards of government entities and within the civil service, where women have been given the due opportunity to serve at the highest advisory and technical positions. In shattering this glass ceiling, we are pleased to be aligned with Sustainable Development Goal 5, which speaks to gender equality, and SDG 10, which speak to reducing inequalities. Madam Speaker, our program to address gender-related issues will be aggressive. This will include support for initiatives such as Girls Empowerment Movement and Sisterhood program that was launched by the Department of Gender Affairs in August of this year, as well as support for the expansion of the Boys Mentorship Program, which had chapters launched at their first high school in Nevis and a second high school here in St. Kitts this year. Further, our legislative agenda will reflect this priority. We will ensure that gender and youth issues are mainstream in all major government policies. Special consideration will also be given to young professional women who are single parents, who, although they may have achieved a certain status in life, cannot afford to finance the building of a home and meet their many parental obligations. This is especially important to us to build generational wealth and social equity among our young women in our nation, knowing that more than 50% of the households in the Federation are headed by women. Madam Speaker, this is critical and important. And I want to say to the men of our country that empowering women empowers women, children, men, families, all sectors and all groups in the society would be empowered when women are empowered. So let us not think that women empowerment is just a woman issue. It is really a national issue, and I encourage all of us to be a part of it. Madam Speaker, just by giving opportunities, equal opportunities, will result in the growth of the economy if nothing else happens. Because it is already seen that in a society where there is equality or equity, persons have the opportunity to really pursue their lives in wholesome ways, and that in itself adds to the GDP. And therefore, we will continue to pursue it in our parliament. We see it in our cabinet. We see it as well. And Madam Speaker, you never know. We might just have the first ever woman. Madam Speaker, education is key to developing our human capital and ensuring the livelihoods, welfare, and self-actualization of our people. Much can be said about education, but in consideration of our development goals, there is no escaping the fact that it is foundational to a sustainable island state. We cannot achieve it if our people are not educated. We believe that access to quality education is not a privilege, but a fundamental human right. It is a foundational principle of the labor movement. That is why we are 90 years and strong, because these principles have guided us for many years. It was the first labor administration that brought comprehensive secondary education to our people. You have people still doing entrance exams in some parts of the Caribbean, but we have gone past that long time, and we are seeing the benefits of it, so that children of sugar workers can achieve anything they want to achieve. And that is why we must pay homage to those who set those foundations. Our first national hero and his team, the Right Honorable Robert Llewellyn Bratcher, and specifically a former representative for constituency number 8, Fitzroy Bryant. God bless their souls. To this end, one of our first executive actions as a new administration was to provide free tuition for all students at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, Madam Speaker. We believe that education must not be a privilege, but it has to be considered a human right. A right for every child that is born in this country to have access to education. Because without education, they can't pursue their own happiness, much less the happiness of the collective. Our society cannot afford to have valuable young minds forego tertiary education simply because they or their families cannot afford the cost of going to college. Madam Speaker, back then, when that labor administration created the policy that afforded the opportunity for all persons 12 years and older to go to high school, they also envisaged a day when education will be totally accessible. And so in this modern era, we are fulfilling that lofty goal of making sure that education is accessible. And we have gone from a high school education now onto tertiary education, and therefore we are saying that that education must also be accessible to all, regardless of their socioeconomic background. We will therefore spare no effort to equip our students to take their rightful place in the world of work, whatever the field they choose. Further, we have already begun to arrange to put the one-to-one laptop program back in place so that our students can have access to technology they need to successfully compete against their peers internationally. Madam Speaker, here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have a very bright population. The world is now moving to technology. I told you I have a device here, and people are wondering what I'm reading from. I will explain after. But that is to show that if we don't integrate the technology into what we are doing, we will be left behind. Madam Speaker, when I see paper, my head hurts me. Each time I see a paper, I say, why this can't be on a device? Why can't it be on a device? And therefore, we know that the technology exists for allow us to do all of that. And therefore, when investors come, one of the things they ask is, how much gigabytes can you deliver? They're not even talking megabytes, they're talking gigabytes to power their industries. And at this point, I want to say that the Minister of ICT, the member from number 3, who himself is an IT man, has committed to transforming this landscape to make us leaders. To make us leaders. IT professional. IT professional. All right. Madam Speaker, it's very critical that we are able to deliver this. And that is why, again, we have persons like him a part of the team and leading this. He is part of the industry, and therefore, we make sure that. Madam Speaker, at this point, I also want to recognize the member from number 1, the Minister of Education. He said he's going to do new deal. I thought he was waiting until a couple of years very quickly. I saw him at the Basque High School. I thought he was going to pull a deal as well. Ready to go. But in order to deliver on the new deal that we have promised in the education sector, new leadership within the Ministry of Education has begun to assess ongoing initiatives to reduce those gaps for the period 2022-2023. The Ministry of Education will continue to support capacity-based education delivery and development courses aimed at meeting identified areas for capacity building. Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is our intention to support our teachers so that they can perform at the highest level. Financing imperatives for 2023 will focus on 1, the procurement and issuance of compatible devices, laptops and tablets, to facilitate all teachers and students taking advantage of Microsoft 365, M365 environment, with commencement of training for education officers, teachers, and students on the effective use of M365 environment, an upgrade of the internet infrastructure in schools to accommodate multiple device connections and stable Wi-Fi service. The school's computer labs will also be upgraded so that computers can connect to the internet and efficiently run applications in M365. Madam Speaker, that is what you call the New Deal and transformation. The physical state of our education infrastructure leaves much to be desired. It is quite obvious that many of our school buildings have been allowed to fall into an unacceptable state of disrepair and dilapidation. This St. Kitts Nevis Labor Administration knows that our children deserve better and cries shame on those who were the former custodians. We have come to shed light on a path to a better way for education in this country, and that we shall do. Plans are being developed for the rehabilitation and upgrading of all schools. This would be a massive undertaking, but it is necessary after years of neglect and lack of maintenance. Our comprehensive approach involves the creation of a maintenance unit dedicated to the upkeep of school premises. This will ensure that our schools do not deteriorate to such a poor state again. The rebuilding of the Bastia High School is another important project for implementation by our government. The travesty surrounding the construction of this school is well known to our people. Madam Speaker, our children and their parents who rely on this school for education services deserve better. Our teachers deserve better. The administration understands what it takes, what is at risk here, and will do better by our people. In short order, we will push forward with the rebuilding of the Bastille High School at its original location. We are seeking to address the outstanding issues related to the mismanagement of the project, while at the same time making plans for the redesign and other pre-construction activities for the new school. Very shortly, we will advance the plans for the demolition of the old school, which has started, and the preparation of the lands for the new construction. We also intend to progress with the work started this year for the design of and reconstruction of the Joshua Obadiah Williams Primary School, which was destroyed by fire. This will include the addition of a new wing, the modernization of all facilities, as well as the incorporation of design features such as wheelchair access, ramps to accommodate persons who are differently abled. Madam Speaker. And so I want to say, Madam Speaker, that education is fundamental to our advancement, and we will spare nothing to achieve our goals. Madam Speaker, a healthy population is one of our nation's most important assets. And as you know, health is really one of the things that I would have been speaking about for a very long time. This philosophy will underpin our actions as we seek to transform the health sector of our country in 2023 and beyond. It is fair to say that COVID-19 kept us on our toes as it exposed the vulnerabilities within our healthcare system. Madam Speaker, let me pause to really pay homage to all those health workers, health professionals, the auxiliary staff, for really stepping up to the plate during COVID-19. And that is why they are well deserving of the honorarium. And that is why I felt it was out of order, disrespectful, shows a lack of care, compassion, and seriousness. Because these health professionals, among other frontline workers, actually risk their lives, Madam Speaker. Had the virus been more virulent, which means its propensity to kill, a lot of these health workers would have been dead, they and their families. Dead. We are fortunate that the virus was not as deadly as would have been thought of initially. They went to work even before all of the information was had about the virus. Then they went home to their families, possibly taking death home. And that is why I pause to really thank them for their hard work and all the other frontline workers, and then I will extend it to the essential workers. But the truth is that the poor state of healthcare system was evident before COVID-19. We are not daunted by the enormity of the task to bring the system up to an acceptable level of service delivery in the context of a modern St. Kitts and Nevis. We have therefore taken stock and have established some clear plans for delivering better quality services and bolstering the system so that it can withstand future exogenous shock such as these pandemics. The Ministry of Health will be guided by the National Health Strategic Plan, which will be updated to achieve alignment with the reform agenda of this new administration. In keeping with the commitment of the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development Goals, the Ministry of Health continues its fight against non-communicable diseases, or the NCDs, which account for over 80% of all illnesses and deaths in the Federation, those with cancer and complications of diabetes being the leading causes. The high incidence of NCDs poses devastating health consequences for individuals, families, and communities. The socioeconomic costs associated with NCDs dictate that we place a strong focus on the prevention and control of these diseases as a major development imperative for our country. To this end, we recognize that interventions aimed at reducing the burden of NCDs and the made modifiable risk factors will provide the most significant return on investment. Madam Speaker, addressing the situation at our national health institutions will be a major focus in the upcoming fiscal year. One of our first priorities, and my first priorities as Minister of Health, was to ensure that there is a new MRI machine installed at Joseph Infants General Hospital. I am happy to report that a new Philip Ingenieur Ambition MRI machine is currently being manufactured by Philips as a cost of US $1.2 million. This machine is scheduled for delivery in 2023. And when commissioned, the MRI services in St. Kitts would become available for local, regional, and international clients. In addition, Madam Speaker, the ophthalmic services at the JNF General Hospital will also be upgraded with the purchase of vital ophthalmic equipment. Madam Speaker, at this time, the equipment is broken and certain operations cannot take place. We have placed the order not just for new machines, but the best that they have, that we can have, so that we can continue to have our services at JNF. And to those who are delayed, I want to assure you that this government has also moved to modernize the equipment when it comes to ophthalmic treatment at our hospital. This is another service that was allowed to deteriorate to the point of forcing citizens and residents to bear the extra cost to seek treatment overseas. Madam Speaker, those who can afford it go, but those who can't afford it remain blind in this country or have reduced visual acuity. And therefore, we have to act quickly to resolve the situation. We are currently pursuing the procurement, and we have already done, of these vital pieces of equipment, which will be delivered by the end of the first quarter of 2023. The interventions that I just mentioned represent some of the first steps in providing our people with better access to modern medical services. Madam Speaker, we are pleased to already have improved the conditions at the Poxon Medical Center, which serve the people of Sandy Point and the surrounding communities. The changes made include assigning a cadre of doctors to that hospital and ensuring that the role of the district medical doctor is separated from the hospital doctor. This is modern approaches, Madam Speaker, where we have gone from the traditional practice to hospitalists and those who are in primary care. We too must modernize the health services here in St. Kitts and Nevis. These changes have already improved the level of service being provided to the people in the area, as well as improved staff morale at the facility. In 2023, we will implement this model at the Mary Charles Hospital in Molyneux as well. Madam Speaker, what we are saying here is that when you show up at the hospital, a doctor is supposed to be there. Can you imagine you show up at the hospital and a doctor is there? Is that a hospital? Or is that a clinic? The questions must be asked. And what we are going to do here, Madam Speaker, we will have at least the basic lab tests that can be done and have also x-rays, at least a chest x-ray and x-rays of the peripheral bones to decrease the demand on JNF Hospital and in an effort to cut costs and treat people in their communities, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we will invest more in healthcare for our people, as this is an important standard that a sustainable state must meet. Our health is our wealth. The 2023 estimates therefore proposes that provisions be made for recurrent expenditure totaling $73.3 million, reflecting a 28.7% increase when compared to 2022 estimates. The Ministry of Health will utilize these resources to improve the quality of services across the various programs under its remit, including immunization, non-communicable disease prevention and treatment, and district health access. Priority will be given to the recruitment of highly qualified medical personnel, including specialists trained in neurology, pulmonology, and internal medicine. And at this point, I want to pause to thank the government and people of Cuba. We're at the recent meeting of CARICOM and Cuba held in Barbados, where I am the one responsible for health at that level in the quasi-cabinet, that in our exchange with the Cuban delegation, the Minister of Health has extended to us as a region, and of course to St. Kitts and Nevis, the possibilities of having more specialists, but in addition to that, to have our people trained in more specialties. And that is why I can say neurology, pulmonology, and internal medicine. I want to say thank you to the government and people of Cuba on the behalf of the people and government of St. Kitts and Nevis. Cuba is going through tremendous difficulties at this time for obvious reasons. And I've spoken over and over again against the embargo, and I want to register it here again today, that we as a CARICOM, we do not agree with that type of policy. And so I want to thank Cuba that even under difficulties, that it still extends its resources to us. That is tremendous and extremely commendable. Madam Speaker, I must mention another point, not to belabor the point. But in the early 2000s, under Labor administration, we had two gynecologists who were also specialists in obstetrician. They came, or two obstetricians, they came, and they worked in the health centers. And in short order, our maternal mortality rate went down, and our infant mortality rate went down. We had Dr. Carreras and Dr. Martinez. I say that so that people can see that these efforts save lives. And that, of course, must not go unmentioned. Resources will also be provided to ensure that essential items, tools, and equipment are available and operational for the benefit of persons in need of medical care. A proposal of $20.6 million is presented to facilitate capital expenditure by the ministry for the coming year. These funds will support investment in essential infrastructure and equipment upgrades, most vital being the construction of the new hospital. I want to pause there, Madam Speaker, and I want to clarify something for our people. What we are seeking to construct is a climate-smart hospital. We are not constructing a hospital just because it is politically good to say it. But we know that the temperature of the earth is approaching 1.5. The increase is approaching 1.5. And I'm told it's 1.2, and it's heading there. Some suspect it will surpass the 1.5. Once it gets to the 1.5 and beyond, we are going to expect more frequent hurricanes and stronger hurricanes. We might have 5+ hurricanes. And when we speak about climate-smart hospital, we have to construct a hospital that can withstand the acute disasters, but also the insidious changes that will come as a result of the climate change. And that is why it is imperative. We must be able to have a functioning hospital even after a natural disaster that can be expected. And so this is not optional, Madam Speaker. It is not an option. It is a need. And we as a country has to recognize that. And that is why it is not talking about a hospital just for political reasons, but it's for our own survival. With the increase in the temperature, we are at the mercies of the changes in the weather pattern that will come as a result of the climate changes. Hence, we know that we'll be more exposed to stronger hurricanes. So that is the basis on which we need that new hospital, and we will pursue it, Madam Speaker. The purchase of critical equipment and the advancement of health sector improvement, institutional enhancement projects. In addition, steps will be taken to develop a practical framework to enable the operationalization of a national health insurance scheme, which will be supported by an extensive consultative process with our people. Madam Speaker, I would pause there a little bit again, and to say that just as we believe that education is a human right, health care is also a human right. Just passed in Cabinet, we, of course, adopted and agreed to a document that spoke about rights, and in that is the right to health. We have accepted that. And if we are going to accept that people should have access to health and that healthcare is a human right, then we must create a universal healthcare system. Madam Speaker, if we reflect of what used to happen in the 30s, the 20s, the 30s, and what led to the Buckley's uprising, one of the issues was the lack of health care, where our forebearers used to born their children in cane fields. No wonder people had to rise up. Born their children in cane fields, the children suffering from tetanus. We don't know what tetanus is today because we are vaccinated and we have better social conditions. And out of that came a policy after the Moyne report and so forth, where we have health centers built around the country and all nurses go through midwifery training. Back then, it was very critical for that. We can look at a new policy now. But what I'm trying to say is that universal health care is important. If we don't have universal health care, we cannot truly tackle NCDs. It will be treated as just a disease over here and not included in a universal system. And that is why national health insurance is important. We all will have to pay our part. You know what surprises me? Is when our people speak about the beautiful healthcare system in Cuba and the beautiful healthcare system in the Republic of China, Taiwan, and the beautiful healthcare system in Western Europe and in Canada. And we here can have the same thing. We can have it. So we should have it. But I'm willing to dialogue with our people and to say the part that all of us have to play in order to achieve it. But I will say to them, it is the way to go. It is the mandate of PAHO. It is the mandate of the World Health Organization that countries provide universal healthcare systems, and we will pursue it as well. Madam Speaker, permit me now to speak about law and order and citizen security, because nothing really can go forward without this being. The rule of law is fundamental. Madam Speaker, there can be no meaningful or sustainable national development in the absence of law and order and the rule of law. The rule of law is critical. No democracy can exist without the rule of law. That's the bottom line. And therefore, we must make sure that not only do we have law and order, but we have rule of law. The maintenance of law and order and the safety and security of citizens and residents is the first and most sacred responsibility of any government. Societal peace and stability are prerequisites for true social and economic development, and also for the accomplishment of our progressive, sustainable island state agenda. One of our first duties as Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, my duty, was to meet with the rank and file of the security forces, to thank them for the work that they do, and to examine any internal issues affecting operations and morale. I believe, Madam Speaker, that the treatment of our security forces, as well as the enforcement of law and order, must always be guided by the rules of natural justice. Madam Speaker, in the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic, and for most of 2022, the security forces have been able to return to their main activity of law enforcement. We are happy that crime statistics have continued to be at an all-time low, particularly in terms of gang-related homicides. Nevertheless, the police, supported by the Defense Force, cannot rest on their laurels. There continues to be a substantial, however, number of non-fatal shootings, which signal that we need to remain vigilant and to increase patrols and to ensure that there is a visible police presence in our communities, which serve as a deterrent to crime. The existing national security strategy outlines the objectives and guidelines to combat the 15 threats to national security and continues to provide broad direction for the build-out of the national security architecture. The post-COVID era and the new and emerging national security development make a clear case for the review of our strategy, and that will be done as well, Madam Speaker. So going forward, the approach to policing will be informed by the timely analysis of crime statistics and intelligence gained from interagency collaboration on the security forces nationally, regionally, and internationally. The analysis of the trends observed in 2022 points to the need for the security forces to continue to focus on the established pillars of policing, which include community/police relationship, intelligence-led policing, and predictive policing. Therefore, the budgetary resources would support the police's strategic outlook for improved collaboration with local law enforcement entities, regional and international agencies, continued use and pursuit of science and technology in crime prevention and solvability, and importantly, embracing and actively supporting the current social intervention programs. Moreover, specialized training will be incorporated into the training programs offered to the police, including DNA diagnostics, cybercrime, and cryptocurrency certification. In terms of community policing, specific attention will be given to the incorporation of training to target a reduction in recidivism, forging stronger community relationships, reducing gang membership recruitment, and establishing safe havens for at-risk youths, as was mentioned before. Our attention will be laser-focused on the continued reduction in major crimes. The Ministry of National Security has set as a target the downward trend in homicide from the previous 15-year low of 10 to a single digit. A target is also set for improving the major crime detection rate by 15%. The relationship between law enforcement, Madam Speaker, and the community must continue to be the foundation for general policing. The model designed by the community policing team will continue to be expanded to several other communities, with various explorers youth clubs being formed and the close relationship strengthened between the police and parents and other interest groups in our communities in both St. Kitts and Nevis. Our government is of the view that the continued build-out, for example, of the Explorers Club or the Youth Cadets can constitute a movement of change that can pay social dividends for generations to come. Therefore, we will continue to provide the human resources and equipment that are needed for the development. We urge private sector and other interest groups to join with the government in providing support for these important endeavors. The continued elaboration of the community policing model will be tailored to our society's complex and diverse needs, with the delivery of public protection being informed by community priorities and robust, evidence-based programs. Madam Speaker, the 2023 budget will provide capital expenditure for the construction and upgrade of the various police facilities. These will include the completion of the multipurpose training center at Limekeel, the relocation of the traffic department to police training complex at Ponce Pasture, and the renovation of the Charlestown and Gingerland police stations. In the new year, we would also explore the reopening of a police station in the parish of St. Paul's. Residents of St. Paul's will recall that this important service was removed by the former administration without proper consultation with the community. This is a large constituency and community which has benefited in the past from an embedded police station that provided ease of access to the police services. We will consult with all stakeholders and decide what is the best way forward in this regard. Madam Speaker, in 2023, several other priorities will be pursued for the security forces. For the St. Kitts and Nevis Defense Force, we will collaborate with the Nevis Island Administration in the identification of lands on Nevis for the permanent home of the SKNDF on Nevis. Further, the Coast Guard is expected to start to benefit, at least in principle, from a collaboration for a 40-foot patrol boat by the end of 2023. More information will be given on that. For the St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services, the primary focus will be on the formulation and implementation of a national fire code. The introduction of a national fire code will ensure a safer St. Kitts and Nevis insofar as fire safety and fire prevention are concerned. This will include the establishment of a set of requirements for all buildings in particular zone, including commercial, industrial, and residential. To effect the various plans and programs, some of which I just outlined, it is proposed that $74.6 million be allocated for recurrent expenditure under the Ministry of National Security, Citizenship, and Immigration. A large proportion of these resources will be used to recruit, retain, and upgrade manpower in the police and defense forces, immigration department, and prison services. Resources would also be utilized to enhance the knowledge and competencies of personnel in modern policing techniques. In addition, we would commence efforts to further enhance our border protection through improvements to our e-passport and our border management system. This budget will also provide resources to enable the National Council on Drug Abuse Prevention to complete the national drug policy, which will guide policy on all drug matters related to international cooperation, drug demand reduction, supply reduction, control measures, and institutional strengthening. The pandemic, Madam Speaker, revealed that emotional and mental stress can result in self-medicating as a coping mechanism. To this end, the National Drug Council will broaden the scope and impact of drug prevention and intervention initiatives with particular attention given to the most vulnerable. Madam Speaker, when it comes to action to improve law and order and security of our people, we will keep the momentum going. And I want to say, Madam Speaker, that we have, of course, you would have seen that my first visit would have been with the police force. I want to, of course, acknowledge all those who are in the forces and congratulate them for the hard work that they have been doing. I have committed to giving them my full support and the issues that they might have that we can pay attention to them. Not only the police, but also prison, Madam Speaker. We must never forget the prison services. Our defense force, they need gym, they need more barracks. The Coast Guard, as part of it, also need a vessel. They need uniforms, or they need increase in at least their entrance salaries, which we have all addressed. And so I look forward to continue working with the different aspects of our security apparatus and to make sure that we do well. And the immigration cannot be forgotten either. The fire department cannot be forgotten either. And so I want to thank them for their tremendous work, especially during the COVID-19. Madam Speaker, it is our government's vision to move St. Kitts and Nevis to a position where energy and water are sustainable and in sufficient supply to meet the demands of our growing country. These are two critical utilities that must be available to our people on a consistent basis and are vital to our ability to attract the types of investment that we are currently seeking. We are therefore resolute in fulfilling our mandate on renewable energy transition. Since assuming office, however, we have had to confront some pressing challenges faced by the St. Kitts Electricity Company. Once fully operational, the Skelech power plant has the capacity to generate 48.9 megawatts. However, over the past couple of years, and more so in recent times, Skelech has been operating at a significantly reduced capacity of 27.8 megawatts, which is just a narrow margin above our island's peak power demand of 26 megawatts. This translates into a reality that if one or two of the remaining operational generators go out of service, the ability for Skelech to meet the peak power demand would be compromised, resulting in power outages. Madam Speaker, all of us can remember, just in September, I think, when we had all these blackouts, we had to rush to buy new generators. We are now in the process of possibly renting generators. And we have committed, and I want to thank the Minister of Energy, member from number 3, for making sure that our base capacity is sustainable and is achieved as well. Because when investors come here, one of the questions I was asked, Dr. Drew, PM Drew, can you supply 5 megawatts of power? How can we supply 5 megawatts of power? When we see that we have hardly any redundancy, one generator goes out and the whole country is affected. That cannot be the way that we build a modern country, and we are committed to that. Murphy's Law reminds us that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And at the worst possible time in September of this year, a generator at the plant went out of commission, resulting in an island-wide power outage. This incident brought into perspective the urgent need to strengthen the current electrical system and to find long-term solution to our energy supply issues. As an interim solution to this potentially catastrophic situation, it has been determined that Skelech will move ahead with the procurement of updated generators that are more fuel efficient, environmental friendly, and reliable. The procurement process is well advanced to acquire 2 9-megawatt generators to replace some of the current generators which have either fallen into disrepair, are currently out of commission, are just too old, over 35 years, to supply the demands of our developmental needs. We are in a crisis, Madam Speaker. We have to act quickly. And I dare say we have a minister who understands the industry, and he is a IT professional, but I think he would allow me to say energy man. Yes, he said I can say that. That's a good one. Madam Speaker, and so that process has begun. The new generator sets will use approximately 20% less fossil fuel and have the possibility to operate on dual energy sources such as diesel and/or liquid natural gas. This was a key point of interest to us, as in time we will be transitioning our fuel to a more environmentally friendly and sustainable source. And I think that is LNG, which these generators will be able to operate as well, natural gas. Madam Speaker, this is only a temporary fix to our long-term energy needs. With the cost of fossil fuels rising, Madam Speaker, let me pause. I want to say, and I mentioned it when I did the summary, that every month, this government undertakes to pay $9 million to prevent the increase of cost of electricity. We pay that for fuel. Madam Speaker, I don't want our people to take that for granted. That is a serious undertaking to make sure that in these difficult times, our people do not have exceedingly high electricity bills. And I want to say to our people to be responsible with our energy use. Turn off the light when you don't need it. Use less. Use less, pay less. That's what he said. Pull out your plug. When you charge your phone, pull it out. So that we can save energy is critical, it's important. But as I said, this is only a temporary fix to our long-term energy needs. With the cost of fossil fuel rising and the adverse impact of the use of fossil fuels on the environment, our government, over the next 5 years, will take definitive steps towards realizing notable green energy injection into the national grid. Upon taking office, our government has engaged nationally, regionally, and internationally energy experts, such as Nevlec, the Caribbean Development Bank, the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, and the Inter-American Development Bank to explore the possibility of financing and to seek advice on the mix of renewable energy options needed to make St. Kitts and Nevis the renewable energy mecca of the Eastern Caribbean. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to report that our discussions have borne fruit. Geothermal energy has been identified as a viable option for large-scale introduction of renewable energy into the national grid. We have therefore joined forces with the Nevis Island Administration to pursue this goal in the shortest period in the interest of our people living on St. Kitts and on Nevis. In fact, a National Energy Task Force led by our Ministers of Public Infrastructure and Climate Action has been formed. We are also pleased to discuss with NEVLEC the interconnection of the electricity grid in Nevis and the grid in St. Kitts, as interconnection affords the Federation the opportunity to have one electricity grid, thereby increasing the resilience of power supply across the two islands. When this is complete, it would mark a historic moment for our nation and a giant leap towards achieving energy security in the Federation. Madam Speaker, as we set the stage for renewable energy production, we are also working to ensuring that the legislative framework is in place to allow for the uptake of the different energy sources. As such, we will in the coming year, review the renewable energy rate setting report to revise the draft renewable energy tariff policy. We will also craft the required regulations to govern the feed-in tariff rating system offered to residential and commercial customers. The report explores the mix of solar, photovoltaic, and wind energy options and the revenue impact it will have on both Skelech and the customer base. We'll have on both Skelech and the customer base. In the coming months, Skelech and the Energy Unit will be meticulously examining the report to ascertain the correct approach that will preserve the sustainability of Skelech, while at the same time provide adequate compensation to individuals and businesses who have invested in renewable energy and are desirous of providing energy to the grid. Madam Speaker, this is revolutionary here. We are saying to our people that they can become not only a part of the solution, but they can earn something from it as well. You put your solar panels on. We have the right legislation. You have the correct technology to feed into the grid. And if you collect more energy than you need, you can sell to the grid. And therefore, you can make some money as well. But Madam Speaker, I want to say that St. Kitts has a lot of energy, you know, enough energy to supply it for at least, I would say the sun is going to burn out. Let's say at least 1 billion years. And I'm serious. We have enough energy to supply us for at least 1 billion years. Therefore, what we need is incorporation of the technology. So there's no surprise that the Minister of Energy is also the Minister of ICT, the ICT professional, the IT professional, so that the linkages can be made. When he speaks, he'll go into great detail, and we will be very pleased with what we have planned. Consultation with stakeholders within and outside of the government system will be conducted to finalize the legislative process, after which we will move to the piloting of the new tariff structure. Madam Speaker, as I said before, already there is a gentleman here producing hydrogen from geothermal. Geothermal means heat from the rooms, from solar. If he can do it, we can do it. And we might reach the point where we create an energy department or sector. As a sector, where we might be able to export energy. Madam Speaker, these are not things that we are pulling out of the sky. The technology is already here, and we'll explore it. So, Madam Speaker, if any of our citizens are still in doubt about climate change, one only has to consider our current water situation, Madam Speaker. We, as a once abundant resource, is now growing more and more challenging to keep up with demand. Our government understands that we cannot achieve water security without addressing the issues of climate change. St. Peter's is one of the growing number of communities that has been perpetually plagued with water shortage issues. Keyon, these two areas are in my constituency, right where we are in this area. We were able to temporarily resolve the issue by replacing the pump to the main well, which became inoperative. This is the well that supplies St. Peter's. Unfortunately, this is only a temporary fix, as there is still a greater issue of water availability in the area. Similar to the situation in other Caribbean islands, the water security issues have compounded to a point where we can no longer turn a blind eye. Madam Speaker, we are determined to resolve the water issues confronting us. This is the impetus for our government to re-engage bedrock exploration development technologies that we call BEAD, a company that has provided well drilling services to the Federation since 2007. The initial engagement is for BEAD to conduct drilling and produce potable water in two communities fundamentally, Cayon and Bastille, where water shortage has been severe for several years. The preparatory work for the mobilization of the drilling commenced in November 2022, and in January 2023, the actual drilling of the wells will begin in Cayon, where the water shortage issue has entered a critical stage. I assure the residents of Cayon that this new Labour administration will not make empty promises to deliver water, but it will work towards securing the water resources needed to address your water shortage issues. After exploration has been finalized in Cayon, BEAD will begin drilling activities in Shadwell, which will address the water issues in Bastille and St. Peter's. It is envisioned that the drilling will provide approximately 1.2 million gallons of potable water per day to the system. Based on the success rate of the works done by BEAD, we will be looking at extending the drilling in the coming year to other villages around the island to build the resilience of the water system. In addition to the drilling, our government will, in the coming year, mobilize plans to construct 2 solar-powered desalination plants sponsored by the UAE, with one plant located in Canada Estate on St. Kitts and the other in Nevis. The contract has been signed and mobilization will begin in the first quarter of 2023. Once fully operational, the plant should generate 30,000 gallons of water per day, which should be enough to service approximately 2,000 persons. Our medium-term plans involve exploring the possibility of increasing our water production capacity from desalination. The Water Services Department has been tasked with the responsibility to research and advise on the best way forward for achieving greater integration of desalination into the water supply network. Madam Speaker, in addition to the construction of the desalination plants, our government will also work with the Water Services Department to address the non-revenue water losses. To accomplish this, we will improve metering, upgrade the billing system, as well as address leaks from the system. We believe that these interventions will provide the right mix to improve the sustainability of our water sector. The resolution of our water challenges remains a top priority for the government. The implementation of the supervisory control and data acquisition during 2022 has provided a data-driven approach to minimize wastage of this precious and limited resource. Moreover, to ensure added policy support in the exploration of our water resources, the Water Board has been established. I want to pause there a little bit, Madam Speaker. As I speak about the Water Board, I will sip some water. Madam Speaker, the Water Board is critical, and I want to really congratulate the Minister who oversees water to really lead on the reestablishment of this board. We are serious about water security in our country. It is expected that there would be a significant improvement in the availability and reliability of the water supply once the board begins to function. Climate and environmental sustainability, Madam Speaker. Addressing the existential threat of climate change is a collaborative endeavor. This is why our government saw it fit to participate in the 27th conference of the parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, called COP27 in Egypt in November of this year. I want to really thank those who went, led by our Foreign Minister, the member from number 6 and his team who went to COP27, and they would have had a press conference and reported back to our people the success of that trip. Our attendance, and at COP27, I would also mention that we had a pavilion shared with the government of China, Taiwan, at that. And that too was a very revolutionary move in terms of cooperation. Our attendance provided us with the opportunity to sit at the table with our international and regional counterparts to discuss an array of issues critical to tackling the climate emergency that concerns us here in the Federation. As an independent small island developing state, which has been ravaged by the numerous hurricanes, attending COP27 was important, as we need to be a part of the conversation that would deliver much needed financing to our Federation to build resilience and adapt to the inevitable impacts of climate change. Over the years, the climate finance gap and unequal distribution of finance between countries have been barriers to the implementation of the adaptive and mitigative measures needed to adequately address climate change issues in the Federation. In this country, we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in repairing our physical infrastructure due to climate-induced loss and damage, which created significant financial strain and compromised our debt sustainability. Madam Speaker, I am of the firm belief that we must know where we are to know where we are going. Thus, we have undertaken the process to prepare our first voluntary national review of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals to be presented at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum for the Sustainable Development in New York in July of 2023. The voluntary national review highlighted our progress as it relates to several environmentally sensitive SDGs. These include SDG 6, which speaks to clean water and sanitation, SDG 13, climate action, SDG 14, life below water, and SDG 15, life on land. Some of the main themes coming out of this review bring home the reality that more effort is needed to improve the protection of the ecosystem and biodiversity. Thus, in the coming year, we will be focusing on reaffirming all watershed areas and aquifers as protected areas by strengthening the enforcement mechanism within these protected areas. Additionally, the analysis of the status of the implementation of SDG 14, life below waters, reveal a need to promote coastal protection. Therefore, we are now working towards the implementation of a coastal protection and blue economy concept note. The note will be submitted to the Green Climate Fund for funding that will address the coastal issues in St. Kitts and Nevis. As we approach the 2023 UN High-Level Political Forum, we will focus on the built environment and donor coordination, as the SDGs under review will include the ones for clean water and sanitation and affordable and clean energy. Also included will be SDGs on industry, innovation, and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, and partnerships for the goals. We are currently in discussions with Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean to finalize the details of the review and the presentation, which should be completed by the end of this year. Madam Speaker, we are serious when it comes to climate action. We are serious when it comes to really providing water and energy for our people. And I'm asking that our people join us on this journey. Madam Speaker, I turn now to public finance. Medium-term economic management strategy, medium-term fiscal and debt outlook, and growth targets. Madam Speaker, when the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration took office in August 2022, the overall and primary balances were in deficit. I want to pause there, Madam Speaker. And I want to pause there because this is why when I spoke about the dividend, I say it is critical that our people get the opportunity to become financially literate. to be given the opportunity, we are bright people, and to be given the opportunity to learn. Because people are trying to confuse deficit with money. They're two different things in terms of having some cash. Madam Speaker, you know, you can have money in your pocket and spending more than you have. We know that. That is simple home economics that we can understand. And that is why I am saying that we ran a deficit in 2022. That does not mean we don't have money. It means we spend more. Than budgeted. Simple fact. And I don't know why people will take to airways to try to mislead a whole population. We must just tell the truth. Madam Speaker, I will never hide an IMF report. Because people must know the truth. The 2018 IMF report was hidden from the people, blocked. One of the first actions I took when I communicated with the IMF is that that report should be made available to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and the world. And now it's available. You cannot hide from the people. They'll punish you. They'll reject you, as they did. Sometimes the information is hard, but people are not children. People understand because they have their own challenges and know that governments can have challenges as well. What they can't handle is misleading deliberately and trying to take a term such as deficit and try to convert it into something that people cannot understand. People understand that. You have a budget for $20 this month to buy lunch. And if you budget for that and spend more than, you know what happened? You might have had to take an extra $5 because you wanted an extra chicken into chicken and chips. But you run a deficit, that's what your budget, but you pull it from somewhere else. It doesn't mean that you didn't have money. So these are basic things when it comes to understanding what is taking place. So I want to say to the world that the 2018 IMF report is available. That will never happen under our watch. It never did under the previous administration. This information must be made available. And so the overall balances were in deficit. So too was the government's net fiscal position. It is expected that these deficits will be protracted to the end of the year. In fact, we are anticipating that by the end of 2022, the overall deficit would be in the region of 82.8 million. The primary deficit will be around 66.9 million, and the net fiscal deficit will be approximately 95.9 million. These fiscal deficits were driven in part by the buyback of lands that form part of the debt for land swap, as well as the financial assistance that was given to Skelech to facilitate the purchase of fuel. Therefore, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration, Madam Speaker, gives its commitment to put the government's finances back on a sound and sustainable track. We will give our commitment to eradicate the many instances of corruption that in the past resulted in the misuse and wastage of taxpayers' money. $14 million to manage dirt. That's a waste. One person and step, pap, this, that. That's a waste. Phantom names, benefiting from social programs, phantom security numbers, wastage of money. And at the end of the day, hiding an IMF report because they didn't want any accountability. You know, can you run a country like that? Hiding information from the people. Therefore, Madam Speaker, we give our commitment to strengthen the public financial system to the highest level that would be conducive to the full development of a sustainable island state. The 2023 estimates is a demonstration of our undertaking to implement programs that will provide opportunities for inclusive growth and advancement of the citizenry of our federation. The government's resources will be used to deliver the needed programs and services effectively and efficiently in these times of uncertainty. We are therefore putting forward estimates that will anchor our country's recovery from the pandemic, while at the same time prudently managing the government's finances. Madam Speaker, as our new administration endeavors to implement our vision of transforming St. Kitts and Nevis into a model sustainable island state, we are acutely aware of the need to remain committed not just to the principles of prudent fiscal management, but debt management as well. In moving beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, we must remain resilient and pursue sound economic and debt management policies that would position St. Kitts and Nevis in good stead for future sustainable economic growth. In that regard, it is expected that the policies that will be implemented by this administration would translate into a decline of 1.1% in the total public sector debt by the end of 2022 in comparison to 2021. We therefore project that the total public sector debt will fall to 1.5 billion or 62.8% of GDP at the end of 2022. As we look further outwards, we anticipate a continued reduction in the total public sector debt and the debt to GDP ratio. In fact, with the forecasted reduction in the debt level for 2023, we expect that the debt to GDP ratio will fall to 58.6%. Once this is realized, our country would achieve the 60% benchmark that was set for the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union ahead of the target year of 2035. Madam Speaker, this is serious business, and we are approaching it seriously. The projected downward trajectory of the debt, coupled with the forecasted economic growth over the medium term, are expected to result in a debt-to-GDP ratio of 49.8% by 2025. The effective management of the public sector debt and the cost of that debt are critical components of the promise that we made to the people of this country, that we would forge a new path to build resilience and provide better opportunities for a brighter future. Regarding the economy in 2023, real GDP growth is estimated to be 4.6% and 3.9% over the medium term. The projected GDP growth rate is attributed mainly to the recovery of various economic sectors that were impacted by the prolonged effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and part of it, of course, was unnecessary. As the economy rebounds, moderate increases in economic activity are projected for tourism, agriculture, and construction sectors. The tourism sector, which was most affected by the pandemic, is forecasted to grow by 30.1% in 2023. Madam Speaker, in other words, the ships coming back, people are coming and venturing deeper, and 5.8% on average over the medium term. Prospects for growth for the sector would be contingent on increased tourist arrivals from stay-over visitors and cruise ship calls. As mentioned earlier, for the 2022-2023 cruise season, it is expected that over 900,000 passengers would arrive at our shores. A boost in regional travel is also anticipated. We welcome the operations of the new ferry service between St. Martin, St. Eustatius, Sable, and St. Kitts and Nevis. This is indeed an opportunity to improve connectivity with our neighboring islands and reduce the cost of travel for our citizens and residents. With respect to the agriculture sector, growth for 2023 is projected to be 7.1% and 8.5% over the medium term. We intend to bring about transformative change to critical subsectors of the agriculture sector to increase food production and reduce our food import bill by 25% by 2025. The focus will be on producing local priority crops and products that are highly imported in St. Kitts and Nevis. Additionally, greenhouses will be constructed to improve irrigation and pest control. It is expected that these initiatives would increase the sector's contribution to GDP over the medium term. Madam Speaker, construction activity continues to be the largest economic sector and is forecasted to grow by 3.7% in 2023 and 2.1% over the medium term. The public sector infrastructure program will continue in 2023 with the construction and resurfacing of St. Peter's is the fastest growing community in St. Kitts. That road is heavily used. And resurfacing took place, and St. Peter's were told they're not a part of the network of the island main road. When you drive there, the potholes, we had to patch it recently. Serious. Very serious. And that is why we will resurface the St. Peter's main road, and also there will be areas where we'll put in sidewalks. This has been repeated since the 2015 election. And all that was delayed will now be completed under the representative from constituency number 8. And so the St. Peter's main road and roads in various residential developments around the island in support of the expected increase in housing construction. We also intend to advance plans for the design and construction of public buildings, including, of course, the new hospital we spoke about, start on the New Bastia High School. It is further anticipated that the construction sector will be positively impacted by private sector activity through the execution of a number of housing projects. Madam Speaker, we need to get back our construction workers out there, those who do the brick lane or run the blocks, as we say in St. Kitts, those who are the masons in other terms, those plumbers, electricians, the roofers, the laborers, the heavy equipment operators, the carpenters. We have to get our people back to work, and that is what we will start doing immediately. We have started, and we will speed up the process as soon as this budget is passed. We are aware that the rising cost of food and fuel globally are significantly impacting local consumption and business activity. The increased cost of living also has the potential to negatively impact all sectors of the economy, which are key to realizing the 4.6% growth projected for 2023. Our estimates of inflation indicate that it is expected to remain elevated as international price increases penetrate the local economy. For 2023, inflation is projected to be 2.3% compared to an average of negative 0.1% over the period 2019 to 2021. Madam Speaker, we know how difficult this is. All of us are suffering from this. You go to the supermarket, one price. You go in the next month or so, the price has changed, and not go down, you know. The price has gone up. It's tough. People are having it tough. And therefore, we have to do what we have to do to make sure that we manage the prices and keep a close eye on the prices, especially of the basket of goods that we always speak about. That is why it's important that in our agriculture sector, we start to produce and produce more so that we can cut down on the importation of inflation. A lot of this inflation is imported, and that is because we rely so heavily on imported food. This is not any talk anymore for political expediency, but this is real talk to resolve real problems that our people are facing. And so we'll keep a close eye on this. And so I also want to say to people that the prices, that we must make sure that there's no price gouging, that persons will not take advantage to inch the price up even more, because all of us are affected. But notwithstanding, the government will continue to provide targeted support to households and businesses to help curb the rising inflationary pressures. Madam Speaker, our government has received a mandate to oversee the transformation of the macroeconomic and social development of St. Kitts and Nevis as we traverse the post-COVID-19 era. To this end, we have outlined our vision in our sustainable island state agenda, which will guide this inclusive, people-focused, resilient development trajectory. It is clear that we are in congruence with Sustainable Development Goal number 16, which suggests that for us to sustain economic growth and development, our society must maintain high levels of peacefulness and inclusivity. It also suggests that justice should be provided to all, and we should have effective, accountable, and well-managed institutions at all levels. The 2023 budget plans, Madam Speaker, place emphasis on these critical areas as we aim to work via the various line ministries and other public entities to advance our homegrown sustainable island state agenda. Madam Speaker, the 2023 estimates are to a large extent guided by the medium-term fiscal framework developed by the Ministry of Finance to help determine the most sustainable fiscal path for the government over the period 2023 to 2025. Based on that framework, our government is expecting to raise revenue in line with projected GDP growth rate. The estimates presented here today are therefore forecasting that the fiscal operations of the government would result in an overall surplus of 27.6 million for 2023 fiscal year and an average of 30.7 million over the period 2024 to 2025. The current revenue is projected to be approximately 993.2 million for 2023 and 945.6 million over the medium term. The amount for recurrent expenditure would likely reach 812.1 million for 2023 with an average annual total of 820.6 million for fiscal years 2024 and 2025. The public sector investment program reflects the government's intention to implement capital projects that will ultimately lead to real economic growth and pave the way for developing a sustainable island state. In this regard, we are projecting 178.8 million from capital expenditure in 2023, while over the medium term, outlays are expected to average about 165.5 million. In our fiscal planning for 2023, we quickly recognize that good fiscal governance must come from deliberate actions on the part of ministries and departments. The onus is on us to be responsible and prudent in the use of the government's limited financial resources while executing the mandate that the people of this country have given to us. Further, our government will strive to ensure that the implementation of this budget yields better value for money through improved management of the operations of all line ministries and departments. We have appointed a number of new accounting officers who are expected to bring the level of leadership necessary for the government to achieve this important objective. Fiscal measures and other strategic interventions, Madam Speaker. The significant uncertainties and challenges that confront the global economy necessitate the development of realistic policies to minimize the impact of exogenous shocks that may emerge and affect us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. One aspect of our fiscal strategy is to have a predictable and stable revenue base that we can rely on to fund the various public sector programs. The medium-term fiscal strategy will therefore focus on the following. One, reducing the heavy reliance on CBI inflows to finance the execution of the government's recurrent programs. Two, preserving the tax base by limiting discretionary concessions such that the granting of tax concessions would be based on the provisions of relevant legislation governing the tax regime. Three, continuing to strengthen the administration of the tax system, including the review and enforcement of the policies to support taxpayer compliance. Assessing and actively pursuing the collection of arrears to government revenue agencies. 5, containing and reprioritizing government expenditure. 6, designing an appropriate framework for the introduction of fiscal rules to guide and strengthen government's fiscal operations. 7, completing the work for the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund to which I spoke to earlier. 8, reviewing the Protection of Employment Act, specifically those sections that pertain to severance payments and long service gratuity, to ensure that the severance payment fund is sustainable, contributions to the fund are adequate, and any loopholes in the legislation are closed. Completing the work then necessary to facilitate the introduction of unemployment benefits legislation, critical. Next, we're assessing and centralizing the administration of the various social safety net programs to ensure that the programs are sustainable and target those persons who are in need. And that has been started, of course, by the re-registration of the PAP program and what will take place in 2023. Madam Speaker, it was alarming to the new St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration team to discover the extent to which the financing of the government's operation has been relying on the CBI program. This is not sustainable and will not provide a solid foundation for us to build out our vision of a sustainable island state. Over the medium term, we must therefore chart a different course by reducing the current heavy reliance on CBI inflows to finance the government's operations. Development partners such as the International Monetary Fund have in the past raised this as an issue for the government to seriously consider as part of its work to strengthen the policy framework. Our vision is for the CBI revenue to be used to finance transformational projects in the Federation. The CBI program would be better utilized to bring about fast improvements in our country's health and education sectors. It will be better utilized to enhance our public infrastructure, including our roads, electricity, and water supplies. The program could be of great assistance in the digital transformation of our economy, as well as our transitioning of the green and blue economies. The development of resilient infrastructure would undoubtedly attract further investments to our shores and allow our people to capitalize on emerging opportunities. It would play a key role in our goals of diversifying the economy and job creation. Madam Speaker, we cannot continue to turn a blind eye to the steady erosion of the tax base, as this is not consistent with international best practice in public financial management. We understand that there is much room for improvement in the rate of compliance with the various tax legislation. I therefore encourage all citizens and residents to be responsible and honor your tax obligations as they become due. At the same time, we understand the need for the government to do what it can to continue to support the recovery of our economy. We are also conscious of the need for a comprehensive review of the measures put in place to support businesses and households over the past 2 years. The reality is that as economies across the globe regain growth, many countries have already dialed back their pandemic support. This trend suggests that our government would have to consider making similar policy decisions. As the economy is demonstrating signs of rebound in practically all sectors, and this trend is expected to follow in 2023, we are, however, cautiously optimistic and have determined that some of the core elements of the pandemic support would remain in place up to June 2023 at least, by which time we hope to have had a comprehensive stock taking and updated information on the actual state of affairs in our economy. Towards this end, our government will continue to support the reduction of the corporate income tax rate from 33% to 25% for businesses that retain at least 75% of the employees, and the reduction of the unincorporated business tax rate to 2%, down from 4% until at least June 30th, 2023. Madam Speaker, this demonstrates, this shows that we are serious about the viability of businesses as well. We want our businesses to do well. As a matter of fact, we have formed this year a small business ministry where we want to set up a one-stop shop where a man on the road or a woman can have an idea, walk through the door with an idea, and come out with a business. That, of course, will increase the wealth of our people and opportunities for our people. And so we are mindful of the fact that our tax regime must also support such initiatives. This, as I said before, this will allow for the time necessary for consultations with key stakeholders in the private sector to help to determine the policy direction of the government. We will not do this alone. We look forward to engaging with the public on these and other important matters concerning good tax governance. Madam Speaker, the newly developed Ministry of Small Business and Entrepreneurship will focus its resources to promote opportunities for economic development through micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. The ministry will become the primary conduit to provide technical support to the COVID-19 Recovery Micro, Small, and Medium-Sized Business Fund established at the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis. Madam Speaker, as I've said, we have put a number of critical measures forward to deal with the post-COVID-19 economy. One of them, of course, is to enhance the state of small businesses here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And this plan is already being done in the Development Bank. And Small Business Ministry will link with the Development Bank as well to see the full play of what we are trying to achieve here. To stabilize small businesses and to see the establishment of more small businesses. And therefore, in collaboration with its business arm, the Small Business Development Center, the new ministry will provide training to our entrepreneurs in business procedures and marketing techniques as part of its engagement with key stakeholders in the public and private sector. The ministry will undertake a robust monitoring and evaluation program in relation to those businesses which benefit from government support, whether financial or technical. In support of these efforts, capital expenditure totaling $250,000 is being proposed as part of the incremental rollout of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Development Project. The COVID-19 Recovery Micro, Small, and Medium-Sized Business Support Fund was established at the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis in November 2022. The primary objective of the establishing this fund is to provide micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises with better access to capital to fund business opportunities, innovative projects for business expansion or improvements in operations. It is anticipated that this support will assist recipients to sustain or restart output, operations, employment, improve livelihoods, and contribute to the economic recovery in the Federation. Our government has earmarked the sum of $20 million to support the development of our small business sector via this initiative. In the coming year, we will expand the program to other financial institutions, particularly qualifying credit unions that are interested in partnership with the government in this worthy facet of nation building. Madam Speaker, in addition to the plans for building up our basic infrastructure and housing stock, our government intends to implement specific incentive packages that will help to drive construction in the country over the next 5 years. The expansion of the first-time homeowners program is one of these initiatives. It is important for us to remember that it was a St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration that introduced this program in 2011. The program has delivered great utility, and to date, because of the innovation of a St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration, over 1,663 homeowners have benefited from this program. We know that there are many more of our people who can benefit from this helping hand. Considering the upward movements in the cost of construction, especially in the post-pandemic era, we have determined that the level of duty-free concessions and building materials would be increased from the current allowance of $400,000 to $500,000. This will certainly assist our people who are constructing or renovating their homes to pursue their dreams of home ownership and at the same time make their individual contribution to the rebound in the construction sector. In this way, Madam Speaker, persons who can help themselves with the construction of their own home can do so without having to wait on the NHC to do it for them. During the first half of 2023, we will develop the mechanisms for the design of various programs identified to support implementation under the umbrella of the 7 pillars mentioned earlier. Some of these initiatives include providing diversified housing solutions such as bundles of building materials targeted at disadvantaged and marginalized youth, introducing a program to accelerate the pace of the installation of solar panels to help power more homes across the Federation and advance our green energy transition, completing the design for the introduction of universal health insurance for all citizens and residents living in the Federation, establishing a framework for the introduction of a low-cost student loan facility to assist more of our young people to pursue undergraduate and graduate studies. Madam Speaker, as I conclude, good governance is an important cross-cutting theme for the implementation of our sustainable island state. And I deliberately slow down on that. Good governance, Madam Speaker, can no longer be put on the back shelf. Good governance is essential for us to achieve our sustainable island state. We were promised good governance, Madam Speaker, and everybody knows by now what we got. And therefore, we are committed to delivering good governance, anti-corruption laws, integrity in public life, and so forth, so that we can have more transparency, so that we can create a system of fairness and equity, and that would allow our people the opportunity to really pursue their dreams and fulfill their aspirations. Madam Speaker, it is important that good governance is at the foundation of all of this, because I would dare say that sometimes implementing good governance takes a lot of courage. It is not always those on the outside, but sometimes you have to look your most beloved in their eyes and say, there has to be a change. It is a courage sometimes to change from inside. And so that is why I'm asking all to join with us. I remembered when we passed the Code of Ethical Conduct for members in the Labour Party. We were scoffed at. People made joke of it. And I said that if we are serious about good governance, it must start at home. Must start at home. And when it starts at home, then you can do it in the country. But if you are a political organization, and you don't have good governance passed in your organization, how can I really believe that you will bring that to the country when you yourself don't practice it at home? Good governance is a benefit to all of us. The countries that do best are countries that strive to have good governance. And we like to point out other countries and say, oh yes, man, look at the country, look how they do, look how Singapore doing, look how Taiwan doing, look how this country doing. Look at Western Europe, look at Canada, look at their system. As if that is something that we cannot achieve here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We can achieve that too. And therefore, we should pursue it. And all of us should really be a part of it. Because I'm saying the amount of corrupt practices that we meet in the government, if that had continued, we would have no country. It's as if people participated in corruption and did not even know they were part of it. Because it had become the norm. You can't run a country on that. I mean, when you look at documents and you say, look, $20 million gone out and it didn't go to a procurement board. People are now stressing us for money. Say they had contracts. Where's the contract? Silent night. asked them, where are the bids? No bidding. I said, do you know that we are not obligated to pay? I'm not talking about just small sums of money. I'm talking about large sums of money. When it comes to the land issue and the mess that has been created, those are things that happened, even in healthcare. Madam Speaker, if I stay here today and I speak about all these things, it's just that it was just straight through the system. That if you cast a net, so much people will be caught in the net and they'll ask, how am I caught in the net? Because they did not know that in many cases they were carrying out a corrupt practice. One person told me they were instructed to. And they would have been instructed to. Yes. Madam Speaker, it's sad, you know. It's sad. Almost everything had something attached to it. And therefore, I am saying, Madam Speaker, that we really need the good governance. Because I don't really want to go back there. That will drag us down too much. But if things are found and people have to be held responsible. But I know if we have the chance to put in the good governance and anti-corruption, at least some framework will be there to really protect our people and to protect our country. It is very critical. And therefore, I want to stress that we do that. Madam Speaker, so that is why we are saying in order to really attain the sustainable island state, we definitely have to have good governance as its foundation. We are particularly interested in ensuring that the public sector apparatus is underpinned by the important principles of citizen participation. They must participate. We can't do this alone. The rule of law, which I've always spoke about. Without the rule of law, you cannot have a democracy. There must be transparency. There must be accountability, integrity, responsiveness, and the absence of corruption and wrongdoing. These are goals that we have to seek to achieve. We are not saying that man is perfect, but we are saying as far as possible, we have to get these things out of our system. And the other thing, I think I mentioned it before, again, is when we look at countries that have these things in place and we say all sort of lofty things about them. We say, look at that country, look at where they're being managed, look at this, look at that. Why can't we have that here in St. Kitts and Nevis, Madam Speaker? Why? This is the next step. This is what the founders of this nation envisage. This is what Robert Bratcher, His Excellency First National Hero, envisaged. This is what they thought about in building out a nation. And because they did such an excellent job, we have a good foundation that they have left for us, and a foundation on which we are built, and we can continue to build ourselves. So in this regard, plans are advancing for the tabling of the Integrity in Public Life Amendment Bill, an anti-corruption bill, and the Freedom of Information Bill. Further, we also plan to continue with the important reforms related to the public procurement regime. Madam Speaker, we expect that these legislative interventions, once enacted, would set the stage for a new paradigm in St. Kitts and Nevis, one that is premised on the deterrent of corruption and the upholding of the rule of law. Madam Speaker, let me spend a little bit more time on this point. Because I remembered, and the Attorney General took me to where the offices for the integrity in public life. And I remembered when the first head of that had to use his own credit card to start operations. Because he would not get any money from the government. And it shows, therefore, that there was no real political will to introduce this. If there were issues, they could have come back to the people and have a discussion on the issues, because we intend to discuss with the people before all of this is done. But I'm stressing it because it is important, Madam Speaker, that we advance in it. Already we have proven that this government intends to have an ambitious legislative agenda. In 4 short months, we have already had 2 sittings of the National Assembly, where the following pieces of legislation were enacted: the Public Health Amendment Act, Civil Aviation Amendment Act, Companies Amendment Act, Small Business Amendment Act, and the Domestic Violence Amendment Act. There's a lot of work going on in here, Madam Speaker. A lot of work. And we intend to keep working. If you look over here, we fit over here, you know. Fit over here. Even the veteran is in shape. I look on the other side, I think who I see today are fit. And the leader said yes. Madam Speaker, coming out of the recent 2023 estimates process, I am even more convinced that the development imperative of our country require us to pursue different approaches to the development of our country. Our people have already taken the first step by placing their government in the hands of a caring, trustworthy, and highly capable St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party team. The budget process has also caused me to reflect on the year 2022 as I look back with pride at the resilience of our people. Through many unforeseen circumstances, we have managed to maintain a sense of calm and made our individual and collective contributions to the stability of our country. Our economy is now on the rebound, which is evident in many sectors. Although we are not yet up to pre-pandemic levels, we have a real opportunity to continue to rebuild the main sectors of our economy and make a headway in new areas of economic activity. For that reason, I feel grateful, Madam Speaker. Gratefulness is important. It's mentioned in the Bible, and I'm sure the member from number 1 can give me a verse. And we are also optimistic about our future as a small, sustainable island state. Madam Speaker, our overarching strategy is clearly oriented towards creating a more sustainable path for the development of our twin island federation. We must overcome the hurdles of lost ground during the last 7 years by jumpstarting the economy and pursuing our goal of transforming St. Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable island state. It is fortuitous that with the combined efforts of our people working across our 2 islands, we are well poised, and I want to stress that. We have to work together across these 2 islands. The opportunities had by people in St. Kitts must also be had by the people of Nevis. What someone in St. Paul's can enjoy, somebody in Gingerland must also be able to enjoy. We must work together. And this government, this administration is committed to working with the Nevis Island administration to make sure that we have opportunities across the board wherever you are found in the Federation. That is why I'm happy with the discussions about having 1 grid, because we are 2 small islands. We can't do it alone. Big countries struggling, regions trying to come together. We are 68 square miles, and Nevis is 6? Something like that. And I'm happy to hear Nevis is growing. And we have to work together. There are a number of opportunities where we can work together as one and work together really to bring prosperity to all of us. And we are open to that on this side, and I'm happy that they are open on the other side as well. And so we can really create a new day and a better way as far as our relations. Madam Speaker, this speaks well for the full rebound. As I was speaking, we are well poised to be among the top choices for international travelers. This speaks well for the full rebound of the tourism industry. Over the next 5 years, we will work together to improve resilience and sustainability of our federation. Dedicated focus will be placed on food and nutrition security, building climate resilience, resilience to economic shock, economic diversification, including exploring development of the green, blue, and orange economies, and think differently. Madam Speaker, on the orange economy, I'm speaking mainly about the creatives. And I want to say that we recently had a movie done in St. Kitts that was previewed, I would say, we saw it on Sunday. I wouldn't say it's the first screening, but we did see it on Sunday where we had with MSI. And I want to say that Nevis had activities such as this one as well. So again, opportunities for collaboration. One of the things that people love when they come to St. Kitts is that they got St. Kitts and Nevis. And one of the things they love when they go to Nevis is that they have St. Kitts and Nevis. And so this is an area where we see a lot of collaboration could be had for our people as well. And just to continue and think differently, a development of the green, blue, and orange economies. And think differently and creatively to aid in the achievement of economic growth beyond the pre-pandemic years. Our plans will be powered by our people, as we will achieve very little without the hard work and determination of the men and women that ply their trade in the various sectors of the economy. Madam Speaker, the Bible speaks to it. By the sweat of the brow, you shall what? Eat bread. If you have a people who are not hard working, they are already declining. They become more vulnerable, less resilient. We cannot create a country where our people are not hard working. I remember when I was growing up, it was, I would say, pride to hit your chest and say, I'm a hard working man. That's why I work so hard. I grew up in Upper Monkey where people felt pride in working hard. A man will come in a shop and say, man, give me 2 vitamins, their egg and something. Say, boy, I'm a hard-working man. Or woman. Can you imagine that? We once had that working hard was something good. How can you build a country that is resilient if the citizens are not thinking of working hard? We cannot have just a handout society. We must place our resources in the right places to end equality and inequity and to bring people forward. But one of the hallmarks of our people must be we are hardworking people. That has to be a principle that must be reestablished. Otherwise, all these things that we dream of, they cannot be achieved. And if anybody promise anybody that you can achieve these things without working hard, they are fooling you. And it's to the detriment of the country. But I believe when people work hard, there have to be certain basic accommodations or guarantees, education, healthcare, right to a peaceful society, water, energy, and so forth, housing. And so having a government built on good governance, with a hard-working people, elimination of inequity and inequality as far as possible, being innovative, empathetic, thoughtful, caring, that really give us the opportunity to attain the sustainable island state. If we reflect on Singapore, which was an abandoned island, and in quick order became an economic hub, we are starting in a better place than where they were. And they're not a big island, big like St. Lucia. When we think about Dubai, an area in a desert in 20 years has gone from here to there, an economic hub, new industries, innovation. We are at a better starting point than where they were. So how is it we like to just sit down and admire them, but we want to do that for ourselves? That is where I think we can improve as a people. And in achieving the sustainable island state, every citizen must play his or her part so that we can become the first sustainable island state of the Caribbean. This is not beyond what we can do. We can achieve it, and we'll work towards it together. Madam Speaker, the workers in the public sector have also done a tremendous job of keeping the wheels of government turning, even under the additional weight of the COVID-19 response. And that is why it is justified for giving them a bonus for the Christmas. Because they work hard, they sacrificed a lot. And that is why we encourage other statutory bodies and businesses to really look out for your workers. And that is why today, as Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, I salute all the workers on behalf of our government. But I did not only want to salute in words, I also wanted to salute in tangible ways, and we did. I want to say thank you to all the civil servants. Thank you, who contributed specifically to this budget process. In particular, special thanks to the staff of the Ministry of Finance who have guided the process and completed a remarkable amount of work to produce the estimates, documents on time for the consideration of our National Assembly. Let me remind our people that this administration was elected only in August, and we had to put this together for this particular date, and we are on time. And that shows the tremendous amount of work and effort that were put in by the civil servants. Let's put our hands together for them. The Ministry of Finance, led by the Financial Secretary, Ms. Hazel, we want to thank them as well. And all those who played, she's right here, and all those, and I want to thank our staff as well, as I did before, and all those who played a critical role in making sure that we do this. Why did we spend so much nights working on this? I'm sure I called Ms. Hazel on Saturdays as well, taking up time. The members of the cabinet, we had retreat. We stayed late in cabinet till 10 o'clock in the night, working through this. We have regional partners coming to present to us so that when we present this, this is wholesome and doable, comprehensive, because we are serious about governance. Some people say, leave it, you have more time, you can have the extra 2 months, I think you spoke about, Madam Speaker. But we say, no, we can achieve it. Why? Because when we came to government, we came with a plan. We didn't come with figments of anyone's imaginations or unrealistic things to do. So when they challenge you, can you give the honorarium? I say yes. Can you give a dividend? I say yes. Because I said to this country, there was an economic team and highly discussed. Highly discussed. When you're governing, sometimes you have to be flexible. But nothing that was discussed just because it should have been discussed. There was a thought behind it and a plan behind it to bring to the people, so that the people can see that when we spoke about the sustainable island state, we are serious people, and we will pursue it for the betterment of our people and the betterment of our country. Madam Speaker, we are aware that we cannot do the job of nation building alone, and so we are asking for the continued dedication as we work together to transform and innovate the way forward for our country. Madam Speaker, we are off to a good start. I will say an excellent start. And more good things are to come as we have a lot to accomplish in the coming years and over the next 5 years. We are therefore taking a no-nonsense approach to fulfilling our mandate given by our people. The 2023 estimates will help us to achieve some of our objectives and set the foundation for the full implementation of our plans over the succeeding 4 years. Madam Speaker, I am and will remain a humble servant of the people. It is important, Madam Speaker, that this team try and do all that must be done in order to achieve what we say to the people we are set out to achieve. I say to our people, as we go into the festive season, and Carnival is off to an excellent start. I was not here for the opening, but from all reports, I heard that the minister responsible for Carnival, with his team, they have done an excellent job. I myself had the opportunity to go to, what the thing by this place called? In the Spirit of Christmas. I was invited and I obliged to dance. And what I found there, people in good spirit. I see they had a jam session that was incident-free. And I want to say kudos to the security forces and to those who have committed to peace, those on the alternative lifestyle program, for example. And so we're after a good start. And so the goal is, Madam Speaker, is that after 2 years of COVID, that we can have an enjoyable Carnival and a memorable Christmas. And so I wish all of our people well, and I'll have the opportunity on my wrap-up to express more. But with that, Madam Speaker, may it please you. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8 and the mover of the bill. Indulgence?
Madam Speaker.
Just a moment. Let me confirm the time. Honourable Member for St. Christopher 1.
I rise at this time, Madam Speaker, to second the motion, and I reserve my right to speak of the safe passage of the budget.
Very well. Next item on the order paper.
Adjournment.
Thanks again to the mover and seconder of the bill. The standing orders, particularly Standing Order 40, subsection 5, provides that the member speaking first, on behalf of the opposition shall be entitled to speak for an equal period of time as the Minister of Finance. For the record, the Minister of Finance spoke for the duration of 3 hours and 21 minutes. Jesus. It therefore follows that the first member for the opposition who speaks will have equal opportunity to speak for 3 hours and 21 minutes. Hopefully, It's a little less than that. But he reserves the right. He or she reserves the right. Honorable members, is there a consensus as to the time preferred for the adjournment?
10 a.m. Yes.
Just before the question is put, just by way of notice, the remainder of the debates, the remaining days for the debates rather, will continue at the chambers at Government Headquarters, Church Street, Bastia. So today will be the only day that we are congregating at this present venue. Again, before the question is put, I'd like to thank all of the organizers for this morning's proceedings, which transpired into the afternoon. Very well. I would also like to thank, in particular, the staff at the Marriott, as well as the Clerk of Parliament, Ms. Trevelyan Stapleton. I think a number of times persons aren't aware of how tedious it is to move the chambers from Government Headquarters to bring it to Marriott. She's diligent. She works very hard. She works well, and I think she deserves recognition. In light of such, might I have the question? You can recognize the honorable member for St. Christopher 3. You can put the question.
All right, thank you very much.
Recognize the honorable member for St. Christopher 8.
Yes, I rise to request that we adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Thursday, 10 a.m.
10 p.m. Right.
10 a.m.
Yes, 10 a.m.
Is there a seconder?
I second that motion, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The question is that the debate be adjourned until tomorrow, 10 a.m., the 15th of December, 2022, at the National Assembly Chambers, Church Street, Bastia, St. Kitts. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. The House is adjourned.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is WIN FM.
So who you left the kids with tonight?
Nobody. They're big enough to take care of themselves.
Girl, you mad? Junior only 7 years old. And suppose something happened to the baby while you're out here?
My mother was leaving me home by myself.